I don't know what else to do. Well, we're not hearing anything.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Sorry, that was the guy running text mess up.
He was appointed by the council to fill the position held by Pete Kurchuk. I'll go through the procedure as we get to it, but right now, we have some administrative things to take care of. First is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, June 26th. Has the panel looked at the document? Are there any substantial changes before I ask for a motion for approval? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the minutes of June 26th.
I move to approve those minutes. And second.
Roll call, please.
Bloomer,
Yes.
DiBenedetto,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Foisey,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Conley,
Yes.
Gray.
Yes. Okay, the next item of business is a report on our urban renewal agency update. Jeff?
Their vacancy last night, we're gonna meet, next Monday at, 5:30 here. Prior to that, they had a walking tour of the urban renewal district.
Can you all speak up?
I was like, you're yelling at your kids.
The Urban Renewal Agency,
Or stand up, maybe.
will have their next meeting, next Monday at 5:30. Our previous meeting was a walking tour of the urban renewal district, and probably here's what they found there. That's all.
Any questions of Jeff? Sandy, City Council?
Yeah, as you know, we have appointed John Gray to the planning board. That happened last night, so he's so happy he's here tonight, of all nights. We are still discussing camping on city-owned land versus camping on residential and commercial lots. So the discussion goes on with that. And that's the only things that actually pertain to planning and land use.
All right, thank you. Any questions of Sandy? Marie, anything from the county?
Nothing to report from the county. We've all been rodeoing, so here we are.
All right, moving on into new business. Having heard from a representative from the Spires, they have a scheduling issue and would like to have moved item B up to number 1. So I wanted to change the order on the agenda. Is there any opposition from the panel?
No, sounds good.
Huh?
Sounds good.
Okay, all right. What we have before us is an application for zone map amendment, track 1 and future phases of the Spires of Red Lodge to designate the existing track as a high-density residential planned unit to move from its R3 PUDS to an R4 PUDS. What we'll do here, just to give everybody a procedure, what we're gonna do here. First, I'm gonna qualify the board. And then we'll go through a procedure, and we'll first hear a report from the city on this application. Then we'll hear a report from the applicant on this application. And then I will note that we've received several written comments before the board, and we want to make sure they're part of the record. We'll go through that. Then I'll open it up to public comment. When we get to public comment, we want you to keep your comments on point to this particular application. You don't need to reread your letters. We've read them. If we received your letter, we've read it as part of the record. Anybody can stand up and speak, but if you agree with that person's statements, you can just say, I agree with so-and-so. You don't have to keep saying the same statement over and over and over and over and over again. One time is plenty to say you agree or disagree with it. That'll help us get through this procedure. Once the public comment is finished, then it comes to us. And we will ask questions of the applicant. We could ask questions of the staff. There might be a question from the audience, but that's pretty rare. Then we'll hear a rebuttal from the applicant after they've heard all this. And then we'll hear the final comments from the staff. And at that point, it comes to us. And we will make our discussion and decisions. So everybody familiar with what we're going to be doing here? Hopefully we can get through this professionally and stay on point. Okay, I've already mentioned the reading of the matter before the board on the hearing petition on zoning amendment for the remainder of track 1 and future phases of Spires. Does any member of the planning board have any ex parte communication to disclose?
No.
Hearing none. Does any member feel that they should recuse themselves from participation in the hearing and decision of the matter before the board?
No.
Has the matter been properly noticed as required by Red Lodge zoning regulations?
Yes.
Okay. Let the record indicate that the Red Lodge Planning Board has been called and qualified to hear the matter at hand. The matter is a quasi-judicial in nature and has been properly noticed. At this time, I'll call on Jeremy, our consultant planner, to give us a report on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Chair, board members. Glad to be here tonight. You usually just see my face and my head up on the screen, so it was a nice drive up here. I'm not going to read the staff report into the record or anything like that. You all have, it's in the record. You all have a copy of it. You've all read it. I'll hit some points in the staff report and then just make some final comments. First, I would just like to say that this is the first step in a very long process for the remainder of this property outside of phase 1. And this step of rezoning, potentially rezoning the property, informs the subdivision process that will be the second step. So the developer needs to know essentially what he's designing his subdivision for, and that's what this process is for. So tonight is just the zoning piece. We don't get into the impacts of the development or anything like that because we don't know yet what that development is, right? We don't know how many units they're proposing. We don't know what the layout looks like. We don't know how many lots, those sorts of things, right? So tonight is not a discussion on impacts. It's just simply a discussion on land use as it relates to zoning and what will be allowed within that remainder tract at the subdivision process or what won't be allowed, okay? So with that said, the subdivision process that will be forthcoming after this will be a much more lengthy process, and it's a much more complicated process than just the zoning process. So there's a very strict rules within Montana law that require us to review a lot of things and impacts to the community and water and streets and sewer and all those things are included in that review. And so that also comes with its own public process, multiple public hearings with the planning board, city council, those sorts of things. So moving on, so really the staff report, we took the information, as you stated, it's the rezone of the remainder tract, so it does not include phase 1A and B. So this is not rezoning of phase 1 and B, 1A and 1B to R4. None of the lots in those phases would be rezoned. This is just the remainder tract that is west of the creek, essentially, would be rezoned to R4. Sorry, east, you're right, sorry. And so, that being said, you know, the applicant has submitted a petition where the city is required to bring that to the planning board with a we can't just say, no, you can't do it. We have to bring it to the planning board and have a public hearing. City council also has to have a public hearing on this. So we have to hear what they want to do and we have to make a decision on it. So that's why we're here tonight. So the staff report goes through the 9 criteria for a zone change. And as it relates to if this was to be rezoned R4, the findings are associated with that, the findings for that. And so again, I'm not going to reread all of, read through every one of them. I'll just hit a couple points. The Red Lodge growth policy, the current growth policy does seem to support PUDs with higher density. And the proposal does seem to be in line with the current Red Lodge growth policy. Again, as far as impacts and those sorts of things, that's not this meeting. And so most of the rest of the criteria reviewed was basically to say that this informs the next process, right? And that there are other things like building codes, fire codes, emergency services provided by the city that address the other criteria essentially. And then the zoning regulations themselves also address that criteria as far as height restrictions, setback requirements, landscaping, those sorts of things. And so that's where we framed our findings essentially for each one of those criteria. Finally, I will just add that in reviewing the zoning regulations, it does state under R4 that the purpose and intent of the R4 zoning district is to provide high-density residential area in close proximity to compatible commercial and industrial uses. So I'll kind of leave it at that. That's kind of maybe the other side of this to consider, is that this is not adjacent to commercial or industrial areas, and that it's up to you guys to decide if it's appropriate for R4 to be located in this area.
Thank you. One quick question. Is this document has been publicly noticed and it's on the city website, right?
I believe so, but I can validate that in the background.
So that anybody that hasn't seen it, they can access it, correct?
Correct, I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
That is my understanding. It has, yeah.
I think it's.
It's been available.
Yeah, okay. All right. Now we can hear from the applicant.
I believe I need to go to box for a minute. Brian, I'm not seeing that. Did you get it? Press send on the US, on that file?
Yes, I did.
Let me do a recycle.
Please state your name and who you represent.
Okay.
This is, meetings are being recorded, and even though we may know who you are, we need to get it.
Sure. My name is John Halverson. I'm a planner with Sanderson Stewart. I'm here acting in capacity as agent of the applicant, that's Trailhead Builders of Montana. Let's see if we can get the file up.
Oh, hold on, I don't want to leave the meeting. I just want to go out and come back in.
Sure.
Brian, did it come from planning?
Yeah, it should have come from planning.
Alan, we gonna do
There we go.
Trailhead first or Spires?
This is Spires.
No.
This is Spires.
Oh, it is, okay.
The applicant is Trailhead Builders of Montana.
Oh, okay.
It's actually Mark and Valerie Allen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Is this correct?
Yes,
Yeah, we have the applicant is Mark and Valerie Allen.
That's correct.
Is that Trailhead Builders, or is that something else?
the property is
It
owned.
is, but it's Valerie and myself.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure this is accurate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Calling you to advance the slides for me?
You just do little Tinkerbell sounds and I'll.
So this is what we're going to talk about tonight. This is our presentation of these slides. We're talking about the existing conditions, the context, what is allowed under the current zoning, what is in the petition, what would be allowed under the petition's proposed zoning, how we're consistent with Red Lodge policy, and then where we are in the approval process and how many review steps are remaining until we'll see any dirt moving or anything built here. Go ahead there. So this is our context here, right? This is at the north end. You can see the site there outlined in red. And then zooming in a little bit here, you can see the adjacent uses. Right now, the site is zoned R3 PUDS. That allows structures with 1 to 4 dwelling units per structure, with a maximum under that R3 of 30 feet in height. There, you can see directly abutting the property to the south is the same zoning without the PUD, that's R3, which allows 2 to 4 dwelling units per structure, maximum height of 30 feet. You can see we've got a little bit of commercial there. I think that's the clubhouse for the golf course. And then the R4 down there, that's 0.8 miles from the site, is existing R4 zoning, which allows that 2+ units per structure and 40 feet in height. And then down on the bottom of the hill, you can see there's that C3, which also allows 40 feet in height there. So under the current zoning, the R3 PUDS, that's kind of a two-parter there. So the R3 is the portion of the zoning that's standard city zoning that allows anything from a duplex to a fourplex, with a maximum of 30 feet in height. So you might see something, those structures pictured on the left there would be allowed under that current zoning. And then on the right, under the PUDS, that allows several kinds of single-family homes as well as townhomes. So that's what is allowable under the current zoning. And then in the proposed zoning, just a 10-foot increase in allowable height there. The main change is the amount of dwelling units that can be built per structure. So you can see the kind of structures that you might see under this zoning would be anything from that 3-story. In 40 feet, I would expect you're not going to get a 4-story building in 40 feet. That'd be a pretty squat little low ceiling building. So I think a 3-story building is probably what you would see in there. A typical apartment building like that in the lower left-hand corner, or something a little more different there in the lower center. So this is the kind of building that might be allowable under that R4 that has, this is a 6-plex kind of building. You can see that it basically just looks like a big house, So you can do the difference between 4 units per building and 6 units per building is not some big alien spaceship. You can get something like this that looks like a residential structure, like a large home. And you can see in the aerial photo there, blends in quite nicely with the single-family homes behind it there. In terms of the Red Lodge growth policy from 2020, pretty recent document, cites a lack of rental units available in Red Lodge, states that there should be an increase of residential densities, that building like this, putting more units in a building, which is the main change that this zone change would create, is really something that creates more affordable workforce type housing that Red Lodge so dearly needs right now. To encourage private sector development of that kind of housing, and to encourage a variety of housing types, and give people a little bit of choice in their housing costs in Red Lodge. If we look at what kind of land is currently zoned R4 in the city of Red Lodge, you can see that there isn't much of it that is developable. And much of it is not actually developed to that 5 units or more kind of structure. There's a little bit up there by the golf course. There's some with some floodplain on it down there on the east side of the river. But not a lot of available sites when we think about that, the R4 description, that it should be close to commercial or industrial uses. There's just not a lot of land that meets that kind of criteria. Next, please. And the reason, really, the compelling public interest for this kind of housing is, of course, the crisis, where people are coming from where I'm from in Billings. 35% of the workforce in Red Lodge is commuting from out of the county to come work here, and that 84% of all the dwelling units in Red Lodge are single family. So not a lot of choice, not a lot of ability to control your housing costs in that kind of a housing environment. Next slide, please. In terms of compliance with the active transportation plan, you can see here that the active transportation plan from 2016 contemplates 1, 2, 3 different kind of east-west trails through the subject property there. You can see with connections down into Diamond C, and then along the top there at the number 18. Next slide, please. And this is how those, and this is getting a little bit into the subdivision concept that we're working on, but this is how those trails would overlay into the property there. Next, please. We can skip through these ones that are text pretty quickly. This is just from our application. If we want to come back to these are the 10 statutory zoning criteria. If you'd like to talk about them, we certainly can. Too far? Yes. Was there a photo in there anywhere?
Not that I saw, sir.
Oh, there, this one. So if we think about the relationship between the existing development to the west of the subject property, those homes that have been built out under that PUDS, and the zone change would occur to the west of that red line there. We're providing, there's already some park there on the north side of Larkspur, but a pretty large, generous green buffer between those existing homes and whatever would be built here. So a nice buffer there that would, you know, that thing is 500, 600 feet, gets along that creek there. And then you can see here that the plan is to dedicate well in excess of the minimum requirement for parkland there. So that just provides a little bit of a buffer between that existing development and the proposed development.
Now, is the green the proposed development?
The green is the parkland. Everything outlined in black there is the subject property.
If I may for just a second to make this real proposed.
Sure.
That helped to have a little bit of a discussion there.
Yes.
Yeah,
So this is built out.
right. That's where the existing park is, right where your cursor is, and then new park right in there, and then new park all the way to the southern boundary of the property, and then park along those ditches there within the property, and trails that connect.
So there's that.
Yeah.
And there's the satellite of that same area.
Yeah. Thank you. So, moving on. Can we just back up to where there was that little table on there? I apologize.
That's right.
So you can see the difference between these two zones. The height difference is 10 feet. And the existing development in Diamond C just to the south there is at that 30-foot maximum. So a 10-foot increase in allowable height there. The real difference is just the allowable number of units per structure. It just puts a higher end. The PUD R3 is kind of a menu of allowable kinds of building that you saw in that table earlier, where you can have single-family, townhome, cottage home, fourplexes. This just puts another item on the menu. We wouldn't expect this to build out 100% fully apartment buildings, that we would expect to see a mix of all of those things occurring in here. And then this is where we are in the process right now, that we had our pre-application meeting with staff. There's the planning board hearing, and then city council makes a decision on that, and then it'll go through subdivision review, which case there will be a planning board hearing, city council again for the preliminary and final plat, and then anything under that R4 zoning, anything that is over 4 units per structure does go through conditional use review. So the public and the elected officials of Red Lodge do have several more bites at the apple if you see something coming that you don't like. So, continue on, and that's what we got. So,
Are you sure where the access to this redevelopment?
That question's gonna be asked, you can count on it. Is that it?
I can answer that question if you'd like.
No, I just wanted to follow the procedure, and we're gonna have the question
Sure.
come later after everybody.
Okay, thank you.
All right? Okay. We received several written matters of the board. They have been put in the file. I think there's 12 letters. Greg?
Yep.
Got 12 letters. Those have been duly noted and are part of the file. The planning board members have received those and read those. Is any other written requests other than the 12 letters that you received?
Dave might have received some.
Dave?
I received an additional hard copy that I received tonight just before the meeting that was handed to me from the front office, so it will be added to the record as well.
Okay.
In the quick view as I went through it, I did not see that it varied significantly from anything we've received.
Okay. Okay, now we're gonna open up to the public. And again, I would encourage you, if you sent the letter, you don't need to reread it to us. You get the salient points. If a statement has been made and you agree with it, you just get up and say, I agree with the speaker or not. We'll try to stay on point if we can. And, yes.
Some people here don't know what the letters say that have been turned in.
Okay. Is the chairman of the HOA here? Is Mr. Carroll?
Yeah.
You want to go first and kind of summarize what's in the letter? Because essentially all the letters were pretty much the same.
I'm Don Carroll, 2902 Bainbury Avenue. I live in the Spires. My wife and I were the first resident there, 2008, I think our house was built. I'm the president of the HOA. I think this proposal caught us all by surprise. we thought we bought into something very different. And I attached a map to our comments that depict what we thought we bought into. That map, coupled with the Spires design guidelines, represent to us the vision for that neighborhood. And we're really proud of the neighborhood we have there. It's a very well thought out community that we're taking care of, and a lot of time and energy on the part of the city, and a lot of people in 2006, 7, somewhere back in time, was put into the development of that plan. And when we saw this, it looked like everything was being thrown out the window. Admittedly, none of us are planners, and we're probably always going to struggle with understanding zoning and planning regulations and whatnot. But it had that look about it. And it still strikes me as odd that the planning process is just going to grind us down to death, it seems like. Now we're talking about zoning, and then there'll be a subdivision discussion, and then maybe another subdivision discussion. And what I heard from Mark is that we might have as many as 9 separate subdivisions out here, all with public meetings. It's like, good God, that's not a way to plan a neighborhood. Maybe I'm misunderstanding all this, but that just doesn't seem like a decent way to plan any place that I care to live or be next to. We're concerned about our property values, we're concerned about traffic, we're concerned about lighting, road maintenance that's already difficult for the city to handle. We try to take care of our streets as best we can by additional assessments. The city's going to be taking on more traffic here and more. We want to retain the park and tree buffers. Whatever takes place here, we're concerned about traffic and speed, respecting dark skies, retaining the park and tree buffers. I like the idea of expanding that park to the south as you show it in a previous map. I'm not sure I want to see a street that runs through our area into Diamond C. I'm not sure that's a good idea or not for them or us. I'm really not clear about that. I don't know what the right answer is there, but it doesn't smell right now. I'm also interested in connecting Diamond C hiking, biking trail to the Spires. That's something that's been long in the works. I think Nick Gaddy might talk about that a little bit later with Beartooth Trails. I have a question. I think a number of us have a question about R4 zoning. When we pull up the city website, it talks about developments would be limited under R4 purpose and intent, developments of 9 to 16 dwelling units per acre. This seems higher density than that. And even the description that we were sent in the mail doesn't seem to match this R4 description here. So we're confused about that. Does that make sense?
And while you're waiting there, we're not going to answer your questions directly here and get into a discussion. The planning board will make notes of your comments, and then as we get into our discussion, those answers will come up.
A lot of this I had written down, I've already given you, but be clear with whatever it is you're doing. Be clear as to where this is headed and simplify the public process if that's at all possible. I'd like to see a plan for that whole piece of ground before you're going to get neighbors to buy into this, I think. Otherwise, it's just, anything could happen. You know, it's the way it looks.
Thank you.
Is that enough?
I agree.
I take that as an agreement.
Yes. Yes.
Does anybody else want to speak to us? Go ahead, please. Tell us your name and where you live.
My name is Trouty Perry, P-A-R-R-I-E. I'm a resident of the Spires since 2008. I'm going to talk, I think you're going to get, and have gotten in the letters, a lot of comments already on the merits. And my comments this evening are frustration with the process. In this age of rampant mistrust, I think the ambiguous nature of the proposal has created fertile ground for what's resulted here tonight. Mark, you were the head of the HOA while you were developing this process, and at the same time undermining the existing interests of the existing PUD, which...
You have to direct yourself.
Sorry. All right, sorry. Wanted to be fair and address Mark directly. Anyway, existing PUD and the HOA's interests. We've gotten this far down the road, and this is the very first opportunity for residents' involvement. Mark knows each and every one of us in the neighborhood. You know, Don asked him, what were the surveyors doing out back? And he wasn't upfront with what was really going on out there. So that's a bit of a frustration. And I guess I would also like to say, this is a true neighborhood already that was developed with intention back in 2006 and 2007. Even back then, we were aware of the challenges that we're going to be facing the community of Red Life, because that was another kind of growth period, a big bubble, and we were worried about things like affordable housing. There's nothing in this current proposal that guarantees, just like Alpine Village, that anything that goes into a high-density area is going to be affordable. So how do we address that? Anyway, we all bought into that, as Don has already said, as did Mark when he bought into it as the developing purchaser. And so we selected this location and development because of the community-oriented, unified nature of the development. And we would like to see that maintained. And I will quit there. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, Wally?
I'm Wally Tate, and I'm the chairman of the Red Lodge Country Club Estates.
Where you live, Wally, please?
Oh, I live in the Country Club Estates, and I'm the chairman of the Country Club Estates Property Owners Association. And we represent 460 property owners. About a week ago, when we got wind of this, we sent out an email to all of our members briefly describing what was happening. And also talking about the connector road between Spires and Diamond C. We received a number of responses back from the association, and I'll say that all of them they all addressed the connecting road, and they were all in opposition to it. It's just, we feel it would increase traffic. There would be the potential for construction vehicle traffic going through our development into Spires. And I don't know, maybe some of you don't know, about 4 years ago, there was a special investment district created to repair our roads in Diamond C. And we're all currently now paying for that repair, and we'll be paying for it for another 6 years. So we feel we have some ownership in our roads, and we want to take care of them, and we don't want to increase traffic. So all of the responses were against this connector road. So I would say the Country Club Estates Property Owners Association is against that. And I'll just end by saying that we haven't discussed it, but I would say we would probably not be against a pedestrian bike path between the two communities. I think that would be encouraged.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to address us on this subject?
My name is, excuse me, my name is Connie Bear. I'm a resident of the Spires at 3010 Elderberry Avenue. And much of what I plan to say, you've already heard from others, so I'll just say I agree with them. But I have to say up front, I am not opposed to affordable workforce housing. We already have some in our development. Personally, I would not be opposed to a small section of that 87 acres being dedicated to R4 and to affordable work, if it was specified that it was restricted to affordable workforce housing. But R4 does none of that. And to me, this just feels like the antithesis of a planned community. to say, just change the zoning, and then later we'll tell you what we want to do with it. So, I know that's not what the planner said, but it doesn't make sense to me to approve this zoning without knowing what's gonna happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ma'am?
My name is Karen Lindeck. I live at 2525 Diamond Sea Trail, and we've lived here for 26 years. We used to live in the older part of, Red Lodge Country called Estates, and then we moved away briefly and moved back and now live on Diamond Sea Trail. And I agree with Wally, what he said about the SID. You know, we care about our road conditions, so we agreed to pay extra. And the Spires already has 2 connector roads, but I'd like to expand for just a minute on our roads. We chose to not have sidewalks. That was a community decision. That was a decision when the golf course community was being developed. We chose not to have sidewalks, so we have wider roads, and people recreate on them. They're used by golf carts and runners and walkers and dogs and kids, and some residents drive fast. You know, it's a tight community. We basically know who you are, where you live, and basically we'll come talking to you, and I'm not joking. And we've yelled from the front porch at people to slow down. So I'm kind of worried about that. If you have commuters going on that road, you know, trying to get to work, we already have worker bees who are building houses who should have left 5 minutes early. So that's my main concern. No sidewalks, icy roads that would be hazardous when they're not plowed all the way out, and fast traffic. So thank you for listening to me.
I agree.
I'm unfamiliar with this process, but I feel a need to speak up. My name is Gary Krieger. I have property on Diamond Sea Trail, 2 blocks away from Karen, or 2 lots. This seems a little bit strange to me in that you're talking about changing the zoning first, and then you start looking at the impacts. We understood what was going on, the impacts of that development. And I think I'm not as familiar with Diamond Sea as probably everybody else. I think this room has got a lot of Diamond Sea people in here, and the concern was interconnectivity. I mean, when you start talking about interconnectivity, you're talking about increased traffic, potential for increased crime, potential for other issues like increased utility usage. I mean, with greater populations, I'm from Billings, greater populations go greater problems. I'm actually from the Heights. And when you annex stuff and when you change stuff and then you forget that exists over there, like they did in the Heights, drive down Main Street. 6 lanes, bumper to bumper. Now, they've spent millions of dollars trying to correct that. I'm just suggesting a little caution on just saying we'll just put traffic through Diamond Sea. That is what most people are really against. That was my comment. Sorry, took a while, but that's how I feel about it.
Right in the back corner there, working our way through all of it.
Clay Cummins here.
Hi, Clay. I'm Carrie Haw. I live at 2820 Diamond Sea, and I did not have a plan to speak tonight, but nobody has talked about the impact of everybody's property. We all had a huge increase in our taxes, and we had to eat that last year. And now you're going to put in 9, 15 people living with crime and traffic and everything else, and it's going to lower our property, but I will guarantee you that the state of Montana is not going to lower our tax rate, and they won't do it quickly if they do. So the planning board has to consider that we are paying for roads, we are putting into the schools here, we are doing all this, and our property value is going to go down exponentially. Because if you look at that multi-dwelling up near the airport, you don't see any nice, expensive homes and a golf course over there. You see multi-dwelling, you see a lot of police officers over there, you see a lot of crime. It's not the prettiest place to look at. So please take into consideration residents of the state of Montana that support this state and support the property and pay our taxes at, most of us had a 40% tax increase. So we're going to keep paying for that and have a lower property value. Please consider that.
Thank you.
This is Jamie
Pearson.
Booth, I live at.
Mike, hang on. We'll go online after we finish in the public.
And I put a chat to that effect, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
Mike Booth, I live at 1517 Silver Circle, that's in the country club estate.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your last name.
Booth,
Okay, thank you.
and I agree with everything that's been said here tonight. The one thing I would just share and challenge the council is affordable housing, workforce housing, they're buzzwords, they get floated around, they're very relative. Affordable to who? Me or the server working in the pizza company? So if those words are going to apply to a development like this, they need to be defined in a monetary way.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Nick Stainer. I'm a resident of the Spires at 3018 Bainberry Avenue. Agree with everything that's been said by my neighbors from the Spires wholeheartedly. And, just wanted to provide a younger voice as well for some of the families that have chosen to live in that neighborhood because of the way that, all of the careful thought and deliberate planning that went into how the community is laid out. We've become really close friends with a lot of our neighbors. There's a lot of young families that live up there, and we love it. We want it to stay that way. And I think that the current R3 PUD zoning, allows for that. It allows for, as it says, a great mix, diverse mix of development there. And just a couple questions about some of the exhibits that are provided.
You can ask the question, but we can't answer it right now. We'll answer it.
Okay. So the question is the status of I believe it's been referred to as City Moon Park in the northeast corner of Diamond C. Montana Cadastral shows half of that as being already subdivided and owned by an LLC in Florida. So I feel like that's a bit of a misrepresentation, of the amount of green space that would be abutting the new development. I think we should look carefully at all the work that's gone into what's already been done up there before we blanket it with a new zoning designation.
Thank you. Yeah.
Steve Roy, I live in the golf course area. My concern as a citizen of the city is the overall vision and look of this city. And I'm concerned about some of these things, these drivers, such as the growth policy, because basically what I heard was the fact that the growth policy is what they're trying to meet. So I'm concerned about that growth policy and how that policy gates anything and applies to anything relative to the view and the look of Red Lodge, period. I personally don't agree with having housing that's 30 or 40 feet high. I think that just gives the wrong look. It kind of gives me the idea of Bozeman, which is a disaster. So, and then there's the last comment, which I heard earlier, which is the affordable housing jargon that's being said. That is just a misnomer. None of the stuff that's been done around here recently, maybe with a few exceptions, has ever become that affordable. It's in the $450,000 range. So thank you.
I agree.
My name is Karen Tackett, Tackett. I live over in the Spires at 2918 Bluebell, and I'm fixing to upset y'all. Okay, so we live there. We have 4 children, 2 special needs. They will not ever probably move out of that house. But I want my children to be able to have friends and have things. They're never going to go off to college and get big jobs. They're going to be the ones bagging the groceries, working the dishwashers up restaurants. And if you guys have ever done those for a living, you know there's not much money at all. I'm sorry, you can't live off of tips. They're still gonna pay their city taxes on their wages, they're gonna spend their groceries here, they're gonna do all that. But if they can't afford to have somebody, someplace for them to live on their own, which would be apartment complexes or the dwellings and that, they're not gonna ever have a chance. We moved here knowing it was a housing area, but knowing it would be developed. Future, people. I mean, you have people right now, okay, inside the Pollard, the Mallard is shut down. They no longer can do dinner right now because they cannot keep their staff up. Well, I wonder why. I'm not saying they're not paying them right, but if they can't afford to live here, they're paying so much back and forth in gas. It's cheaper for them to save that gas money and work somewhere else and live somewhere else. So if we want our businesses to be able to staff their employees, keep them staffed, keep the hours up, we have to be able to afford to provide appropriate housing for them to be able to afford. A lot of them are not, got big families, so they're starting off small. They're going to need apartments. They're going to need townhomes. They're going to need dwellings like that because they're not going to be able to afford a big house, a big yard. But that gives them the goal to because they see what's around them.
Thank you. Other comments? Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jerry Glenn. I live at, on Pine Ridge Road, 2235 Pine Ridge Road. And I agree with almost everything that's been said here. But my question, I think you said at the end, there's a chance for the applicant for rebuttal.
Yeah.
Okay. So question for the applicant is, when we talk about affordable housing, what are we talking about? What do you plan on selling these units for? What are you going to sell a townhome for? What are you going to sell a two-bedroom home for? What are you going to charge for rent on these? There's a lot, when you talk to people that do rent in this town, a lot of them share, you know, there's 2 or 3 people that are in an apartment. So you take an apartment building, you say, well, there's 50 units. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have 50 people. You could have 200 people. And you could have 200 cars for that unit. And if you've got 10 of those, you got 2,000 cars. You connect that to Diamond C, and like Terry said, your property values, it's not an if property values go down. It is an absolute that the property values will go down. The reason people live in Diamond C, and it's been brought up, is they like the tranquility and they like the peace. They like to be able to sit out on their back porch and hear the birds, not all of the traffic going back and forth. And if anybody thinks that if you connect Diamond C, that they're going to take a shorter route to Highway 78 and not go through Diamond C, they're just absolutely living in a fantasy land. They will come through our neighborhood in groves. They will come through our neighborhood and not care about it because they don't live there. So you can continue this process, and you will, but just keep in mind that probably the absolute condition that the Country Club Estate opposes is that connectivity. That's all I have.
Thank you. Something new? Next, go ahead.
Tim Richter, 2520 Greeno Way. I'm just going to confirm, starting with Wally there, the comments that were made in terms of support. The big issue, as I see it, are the connector issue, and there's been no discussion in terms, we're all for affordable housing, but what is the cost going to be for these apartments? The last gentleman, I think, illustrated the problem with traffic patterns and that kind of thing. So we're open for a bike path, we're open for a walkway path, but no traffic. Okay? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. My name is Mike Tackett, and I'm Karen's husband. We live at 2918 Bluebell Avenue. Now, my position here, how it goes, is based upon my experiences in life. 30 years of being in the Army, been in Pakistan, Iraq, Kuwait, parts of the United States and everything about infrastructure and development. We can't shy away from development for a couple reasons. It brings infrastructure, and it brings services. What we want is controlled development, not money-grabbing development. Money-grabbing development says, I'm gonna put 1,000 units over there, and I'm gonna charge $100,000 to build it, and $5,000 a month rent. We're not for that. We want people to have houses. Houses brings in more services, more taxes, more. Brings in more people to our community. Develops it, makes it stronger. The roadway conditions will be improved because they must be improved to have that. We have people who speed through the spires all the time. Speed bumps. It's a lack of enforcement. It's not the fact of being there. And when my family moved here, we didn't move here to go for dark skies. I chose the Spires because it has infrastructure. It has sewer, water, gas, electricity. The basic things that we need to survive. If I want to live like that, I've been out in the boondocks. I have the 4 kids. 2 of my kids are special needs because of what I've been through. That's topics for other days. What they need is friends. They need community mates, people around them. We don't want to flood this place with 1,000 units, as I said. But a lot of these people are right about one thing. We can rezone it all we want, but we need to make sure in the rezoning, we know exactly what's going to go in there. The townhomes versus condo apartment complexes. We don't want that. We want people that are going to live there like a family. And I've also been a cop. I'm going to let you know. If there are apartments that go in there, I responded to more houses for domestic disturbance than I ever have to an apartment for anything. And that's the truth. Living in an apartment don't make you a criminal. But the traffic, you're absolutely right. It's got to be controlled. And that's where you guys have to come in and say, speed bumps in these areas, slow down. Traffic enforcement, slow down. Hit a kid, go to jail. Kind of get it? So we're for it, but we're also listening to everybody else. We need to keep a hand control and limit it to what we need, not what money needs. Got it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Deborah Scheffner, and I have a property at 2235 Linderman. So, I just did basic math. R3 allows 5 to 8 units per acre. And I just adjusted for 80 acres. That's 640 units already. And if you do 9-4, 9 to 16 units per acre, you're talking about 1,280 units. That's a lot of units. And these people have given you no idea what they're going to do. They just want you to change it. If you change it, you're opening up a Pandora's box. What have they provided you? So it's not just a golf course issue. It's not a Spires issue. It's really a community issue. What's the current population of Red Lodge right now? 2,200, 2,400?
Maybe 3.
Maybe 3 now? But, I mean, imagine just the units, 1,280 units if you convert it to R4.
Thank you. Okay, how we doing?
Hot.
All right. We got more here, and then we'll go online.
How's it going? I'm Nick Addy. I live at 120 Meeteetse Meadows Road. I just wanted to say, first thing for the planning consultancy applicants, appreciate them highlighting the active transportation plan in their report. I think that that's been ignored in the past. But I think that, you know, the job of the planning board is to plan and not to react. So I think that it's important right now to, you know, it's not sufficient to say that like the dedication of trails and parks will be reviewed in further subdivision meetings and plan meetings about that needs to be decided like right now in this zone change. If there will be trails that connect, if there will be parks that are sufficient for, that many units and not just little slivers of land on the outsides of the development that would provide any like open space for those people. It's a big thing. That's all I have to say.
Okay, some of the folks online have been waiting patiently. Have we got any more here in the room? Okay, Dave, we'll go online.
All right, if folks online either, want to, let me do a stop share, I think it'll help, and go to a view. If you want to start out by turning on your cameras first, that can indicate, I'll do my best to, hopefully just one person will come off mute at a time, but if I see your camera coming first, if we see two, then I'll mute one. Clay, you're up, go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Clay Cummins. I'm a 25-year owner on 1367 Lazy M. I succeeded Karen Lindeck as chairman of the board. I was on the board of directors of the Homeowners Association, or Property Owners Association for 21 years and just left this year. As I said, succeeded Karen Lindeck and turned it over to Wally about 4 or 5 years ago. And so I just want to second Wally's comments.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
If anyone else online would like to speak, Randy, I see your camera, go ahead. How's it showing up? Hold on just a moment.
There. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Go ahead,
Can you
we
hear
can hear
me
you.
now? Okay.
Yep.
I am Jeannie Pearson, and I'm from 2906 Bluebell Avenue. And the first comment that I have is you've been talking or saying that speed bumps will work for traffic control. We lived in Billings, and they did put up speed bumps on our street. And it just made the kids go faster because they could go. Speed bumps don't work in Billings. I'm pretty sure they won't work anywhere. And my other comment is on the agenda, it says that the rezoning amendment for the remainder of Tract 1 and future phases. And our home is built in Tract 1. And if this amendment goes through, then I could have a 16-unit apartment on the 7,000 square foot lot that is right next to me, because it is also included in Tract 1. And so I want to protect my investment and my peace and tranquility, because that is why we left our residence in Billings and moved to Red Lodge after we had purchased our property in 2008 up in the Spires. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone online?
If anyone else online that interested in speaking, if you're able to turn on your camera, if not, just come off mute.
Online going once, twice.
Let me double check for comments. Most of the comments that I've received have been reverbalized or in just in agreement with comments that have been made previously.
All right, one last pass through the audience. Because now that, okay.
Hi, Becky Van Horn. I live across the street. I am also the historical president.
Where?
Oh, sorry, 10 Platt.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that a lot of service industry people and people that work in town here actually can't afford cars or don't drive. So putting affordable housing that far out of town, you're going to be seeing a lot of bicycles. Potentially, maybe people can start buying golf carts and driving them to work. It's really not an appropriate place necessarily for affordable housing if you don't have a vehicle. That's all.
I agree.
Okay, last chance. Then.
Mr. Chairman, don't be so grumpy. It's okay.
I'm just naturally grumpy.
Oh, there you go, there you go. Well, my name is Bob Prince, moved here about a year ago, met Dave in Bob's Barber Shop, which he proceeded to twist my arm to vote for him, but that's another story. Wanted to say we live at 2425 Diamond Sea Trail. So I thought I'd wait until the end of it because we've got skin in the game because we live here. And since we've lived here, we've decided to sell our home in Arizona and be up here full time. I'm a desert rat. Arizona is a place that does business a lot different than y'all do. So I'm not going to tell you that's the way we did it back home. But I was in the utility business for over 50 years, dealt with a lot of developers. And it's an interesting game. And one of the things that I believe I heard you say was that there was a transportation study done. That's a really good thing. How did that happen until we know what's going to be built? It's just a curiosity. And then the issue of the multi-level housing up to 40 feet. I know a lot of people don't like that, and I agree with the gentleman back here that said just because you live in an apartment doesn't make you a crook. I lived in a lot of apartments until things got better for me. And we've been blessed about that. I'm thankful for that. So I want to see people have that affordable housing. But affordable housing or workforce housing, those are kind of bait words. So I think we need to be careful, and I'm not saying what you need to do, but I'm asking this board to be very careful as they go forward to know what we're getting into. Development is crucial. Affordable housing is crucial. I am an unabashed capitalist. I am not going to ask this gentleman to say what he's going to pay for it, what he's going to charge for it. That's up to the free market. But I just warn you guys, be careful because affordable housing is an interesting term. It's relative to how much money you make. The young lady who talked about affordability with automobiles, spot on. I agree with that. Someone said we might have, 3, 4, 5 people per dwelling unit. That's an entire possibility. So there are a lot of things to consider. I appreciate the work that you guys do. It is not a good place to be up on the dais. It may look impressive to the uninformed, but you guys do the Lord's work, and I just encourage you to continue to do so. And one last thing, I did want to come up here and throw at you all the studies that I found about how high density creates crime. Doesn't exist. There are exceptions to the rule, of course, but it just doesn't exist. I really tried because I really wanted to let Dave know about that, even though he's just sitting here doing the technical work. But anyway, thank you again for what you do. Appreciate everybody's input here. A lot of thought went into this, and as you can see, there's some emotions with regard to this. So do a good job.
Appreciate it.
Talk to us.
I'll try not to be so grumpy. Okay,
My name's Justin Marlin. I live at 3014 Elderberry in the Spires. The Tackett's comments, hoping that their children would have somewhere to move into one day that they can afford, really struck a chord with me. I lived a long time in Jackson, Wyoming, which is becoming just astronomically unaffordable. See a lot of families whose kids grow up to have good jobs, teachers, sheriff deputies, what have you. They can't afford to stay. One thing Jackson has done is created a lot of deed-restricted housing. So they're able to purchase these homes at a below market value rate, and then those homes can only appreciate so much a year. So these families can use them as a stepping stone to get into possibly a free market home in the future. They're not allowed to purchase the home at that, subsidized $300,000 rate and then sell it down the road for $2 million. There's nothing in this plan that, has any mention of any deed restrictions to ensure that those types of families, essential workers, service workers would be able to afford these and live in them. I tend to think if they are sold at the free market rate, if they're affordable now, they likely won't be, down the road. So I would just encourage us to, look at actual restrictions around those terms, affordable, attainable workforce housing, without an authority that maintains that, there's no guarantee they would stay that way, so.
okay. One.
No further comments online, Chair.
And did you get the letter from Mr. Langwitz to put in the record? Do you have an extra copy of that, please? Yeah, and the board got that letter, so would you add that to the record, please? Okay, so on one, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just want, all the comments will be collected and included, and if/should this go past this board to city council, just a reminder that correspondence will continue to be collected and shared, will continue to be shared and collected if it proceeds to the next level. So if there's additional letters, they're still welcome to send in if it gets to that point. Did I say what I tried to say there, and are you okay with that?
What you meant to say is
if we go to the next step, there'll be letters,
R4,
but we hope to conclude this tonight.
Yes.
In terms of this.
Yes.
So the letters would be to the next step, not to this step.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll also mention too, regardless of your decision tonight, it has to go to city council. So if you guys recommend denial, it still has to go to city council. So now the applicant could pull it and choose not to go forward to city council. So that could be an option. If for some reason you guys recommend
Yeah, we're
denial.
not there. We're not there yet.
But I just wanted to throw that out there. Regardless, whatever their recommendation is, it has to go to city council because they have to make the final decision.
We're going to cover that towards the end. All right. Yes, sir.
Just a real quick question. The 12 letters that you received, are they available
There should be part of the
online?
file that you can access the planning board record online.
Okay, thank you.
And if they're not, call me.
Okay. Call you what?
What did you say, grumpy?
Yeah.
call you sir.
Sir Grumpy. Okay. All right, hearing no other comments, I'm going to close the public comment. And at this point of the procedure, I'm turning it over to the board for questions they're going to ask of the applicant or the city. And then after we go through the questions from the board, we'll hear a rebuttal from the applicant and then a final rebuttal from the city. And then it comes to us for discussion and vote. So, okay, so the public is closed. And so any questions of the applicant or the staff from the panel? Andy, go ahead, please.
I started off with the question is, what's the problem to be solved by rezoning?
That's a question of the applicant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I answer from back there, or should I come up here?
Please come up here.
Thank you, members of the board, Mr. Chair. The problem to be solved is that back in 2007, when those guidelines were written, which will remain on the land, I don't know, we can maybe bring it back up, the proposed zoning slide.
This one?
It has all of the designations that are allowed under the PUDS and it's a ways back.
Hold on. Is this the way you want to go to, or you want?
I'll keep it going. One of the first.
I'll start at the top.
Oh.
Was it that one?
And then go to just the next one, yeah. So if the zone change request passes, all that PUDS remains in place. But the R4 is the bit that would change. And the thing is that our client has had, a few people look at it and say that it's just not, developable under that R4, that if you could get 6 units in a building, that would make the difference and make a project, work there. And, you're right that in terms of the term affordability, right, we can't at this phase guarantee that the units are gonna cost X, Y, Z, or that they're gonna be affordable or market rate. But I would say that the way to guarantee that affordable housing doesn't get built is to provide no zoning where it can be built. So that's the.
So the problem being what?
The problem being that those large lot, single family, are just not as affordable as they used to be.
For 6 units?
Right.
And they would be more affordable with more units?
Correct. If you can get more units within the same amount of building materials, it's more affordable.
Well, here's my question. If there's 87 acres in the remainder of
Correct.
tract 1.
Correct.
I wanted to make sure that the gal online understood that it's the remainder of tract
Right.
1, where she lives in 1A and 1B of phase 1.
Right.
Once streets go in and the parks and, the green space, it's my understanding, and you can correct me or not, that there's approximately 49 acres left for building.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
We calculated at about 60, but that's just on the kind of initial subdivision. Yeah, so everything to the right of the creek on there, to the east of the creek. But you got to consider that probably 25% of all that area is going to go into roads, and another 11% or better is going to go into parks, that kind of thing. So what the final acreage will be, right, I know it's frustrating, but at this point, we just can't say. It was the opinion of Ms. Markser, the former staff, that we could not zone separate, we couldn't zone the park that we want to dedicate as parkland because it's not a separate parcel. So that's why you don't see those parks on the zone change application. That's why you.
I understand this was never platted. I know
Right.
that the original is kind of platted, but it wasn't really. There
Right.
were phases drawn out, phase 1 through 7.
Right.
And we're talking about 2 through 7.
Correct.
So we have that original map, correct?
The original map is not in, on phases 2 through 7, though that map is not in force. It was never subdivided.
Correct.
In phases 1A and 1B, that was all platted.
But if that map was developed, as you can see,
Right,
there are at least 8 1-acre lots there,
right,
where there are 4 in phase 1A. And in 1A, there are conditional uses. There's 2 lots that have 8 on them.
mm-hmm.
There's a lot, I think, that Trailhead's gonna be building 7 on. And then there's a Habitat that has 6.
Mm-hmm.
So that could also happen back here, correct, in phase 3, I suppose.
Correct.
But changing the entire zoning, I think, is the issue here. It's not as simple as, and I think that's what you probably heard. I think is the other problem that this land, according to the annexation agreement, the, Spires agreed to, 400 hookups for sewer and water originally. And I did some calculations, and it looks like you have, I have too much paper here. I think that you have 308 left to go, which is, and I'm wondering if that's really the problem here, that you have 308 hookups in order to develop that property. So that's why you're trying to get more homes in there to meet that, to meet the annexation agreement.
So a couple of things there, Mr. Mayor, if you could return to that slide. The cottage kind of zoning or developments that you're talking about, where you have a few homes on one lot, that's under that cottage courtyard. That zoning remains in place. That kind of housing remains possible here. If we change the R4, everything on the right there stays in place. The water connections, the SIA, that's part of subdivision, that the city and our client will talk about what kind of improvements and agree upon what kind of improvements will be provided in terms of how many water connections and that kind of thing are feasible in this area.
I'll think of something else.
So the number of water connections is not a function of zoning, it's a function of.
I do understand that. I just wanted to really know why you need to change it from R3 to R4.
Right.
That's kind of the big question here, is
Yeah.
what's the problem?
Well, the problem is that it's, the materials are more expensive, labor is more expensive, land is more expensive. So if we want to get to anything approaching affordability, we need to be more efficient, more dense on the land.
Makes the land more, sellable. Jeff, you have money?
Yeah, I guess following up on Sandy's question is what is the problem that's really trying to be solved? One discrepancy I think I heard is that there's a limit in R3 up to 4 units, but under conditional use, you can have more than 2 units under conditional use in R3. And as Sandy alluded to, in the Spires Phase 1, we have reviewed and approved with 2 or 3 of those multifamily units in excess of 4 units. So that's really not a limitation as I see it, in terms of to provide that mix of affordability, a mix in different types of housing structures, and the variability that's outlined and has been implemented in Phase 1. I don't see the justification for taking these 7 acres and doing a blanket zone change that really doesn't seem to be warranted. I think the other issue is, again, height restrictions. R4 was presently developed to be focused more closer to the central business district, with access to the central business district. The purpose for R4, in this case, I guess, can you address how that is going to meet, kind of match up with that? And the second item is that there's a discrepancy between the plat map that you showed and what's in the amendment wording says the boundary will be immediately east of Banbury Avenue, which actually, as I read it, either this amendment as worded is in error, or your plat as you described is in error, because your plat shows that the amendment would apply east of the park, but the wording here says immediately east of Banbury Avenue, which I can look at the existing plat. So I guess I kind of need an explanation of that discrepancy and what is actually being proposed.
So I think in our staff report, we were just trying to give you a location, relative to a street. that we typically do. It is just the remainder tract, so it'd be everything east of the
Would that be reflected?
So the way it's described in here is the actual legal description is the remainder tract one. So that's what's being requested to be rezoned. So I don't know if necessarily the location description, I mean, you guys can change it if you want. You can amend the staff report however you see fit tonight. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And then, I guess if I could. So the difference there is that the R3 allows, or the current zoning allows cottages on one lot. So you might have 8 little buildings on one lot that require some kind of conditional review. But R3, in my reading of the code, is up to 4 units in a single structure. And that beyond that it's not allowed. And in R4, you can go up to 4 units in a single structure. And then if you go beyond that, then there is a conditional review. So the distinction there is that currently you can have more than 4 units as long as they don't share a wall on one lot. As soon as those units start to share walls, that's where it changes.
Yeah, I just don't see that in our zoning.
Didn't we approve a 7-unit where they
No.
all share for Trailhead?
Mm-mm. No, we had to split them up, a 4-unit and a type, 3-unit. We wanted to do 8 together, but we couldn't.
I guess my other question has to go to you, Jeremy. I guess I'm having a hard time understanding the steps in the process, changing zoning, and then addressing all the impacts during subdivision review. It seems to me that the process ought to be reversed. We ought to be able to see a plat or some definition of what's being proposed on 87 acres again. If this was one single parcel, is one thing. But 87 acres and doing just a blanket zone change, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding it. How do we address the impacts that have been discussed here in terms of traffic, in terms of water, in terms of infrastructure?
So
if we don't have in front of us at least the idea of what the potential impacts are going to be of this zone change.
Okay, can I say something? The question was to Jeremy first. Okay.
So I've seen it both ways, okay? Montana statute has, these are separate processes, right? They're not, but a lot of times we do combine them. It really is really driven by the applicant, right? They propose something, we have to bring it forward, okay? So that's part of it. That's just part of Montana code, that's part of the state law. I'm not disagreeing with you. It's kind of a twofold thing. In order for them to know what to design the subdivision for, they need to know what their zoning is gonna be, right? So if, for instance, it's R3 now and they wanna leave it R3, then they design their subdivision and they design the number of units that meets, because the subdivision application has to meet zoning, right? So if we combine the process and you review the zoning change at the same time as the subdivision application, if you say no to the zoning at that time, then you have to deny the subdivision, because now the subdivision does not meet the zoning requirement. Does that make sense? And so it just, from that standpoint, I think I don't disagree with you. Unfortunately, the planning statutes that we have kind of limit us to what we can and can't do, if that makes sense. And so they've chosen to say, well, we want to rezone it first, so we know what we have to design to, instead of trying to do that at the same time as the subdivision. Is that it? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, but I guess it seems to me that, as you sort of pointed out, one option would be to present a subdivision review in conjunction with the recommended zoning change. That makes sense to me. That way, as a board, we have the ability to look at big picture in terms of what the potential impacts are. This way, it sounds piecemeal, and there's one comment, I don't know if it's true or not, there could be up to 9 different subdivision reviews. That,
It's a little nuts.
I mean, it's open-ended, you know, from my standpoint.
And I don't disagree with you. I'll just leave it at that. It's kind of a catch-22, the situation that we're in, honestly. It just, you know, but it's what they chose to submit and what we're required to process. So, it's up to you guys and the city council, you know, whether or not you want to agree with that now, or maybe you say no and they bring it back as part of the subdivision application, right? That'd be up to them on how they want to proceed from there, right?
Yeah, that's, thanks.
Mr. Allen, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just
Could you
want-
come up here though, so that you can be on record, get you in the microphone?
Mark Allen.
You wanted to address that question?
Yeah, so when we started this process, there was, interest. Tom Fisher, are you familiar with Tom Fisher at all? Okay. Tom Fisher has projects in Hawaii, Texas, Colorado. He puts together these affordable housing units where there's tax credits that are invested and they take care of, like on the rent. His units that he was looking at to develop would be like 20, 30 units per building. Okay, so when we met with the previous planner, Cody Markser, yeah. And you have to remember, there's been a lot of changes in Red Lodge with the planning, and so we were trying to get some answers. And it was our understanding that if we're going to do any kind of high density, we had to rezone it under R4. We have no intentions of doing all of the high density. So, and it's based on the process that it had to get rezoned so we knew what we had and how we're going to develop it. You know, and I don't think you guys can come back and say, well, we understand, we'll make an exception and we'll let you just have like 15 acres of R4. I mean, if that's the case, give us a number and we can lay it out that it works out for the best. So, but again, the initial process, we were told that if we wanted any high density, any buildings over 4 units together, it had to be rezoned under R4. So that's where we're at.
All right.
Okay.
I'm sure there'll be more questions. Jeff, you got any more?
Not at the moment, I got it.
Teresa?
Yeah, I sat with Jim when I was on council and heard many times, because I was working with the Habitat for Humanity group, all about the water, wastewater up there, and how it was all planned out, the infrastructure to the capacity of R3 PUD S, not R4 PUD S. And then the increase up there, I don't even know yet if the city has the capacity for that? I have no idea. We haven't heard from Public Works, and that wouldn't come till later. So what we do here in rezoning might be moot. I don't know. But, the, R3 units, together with PUD-S, were very, very carefully planned, moving from 40 feet in height from the east to the lower grades and 30 foot and under to the west, so as not to obstruct views of the property owners in the community that were moving in there with the intention of enjoying the view shed and the serenity and the space and all of that. So my question is, with the change to R4 and a 40-foot height, how does that impact the building topology, with the typology and the design? We don't know what that looks like either.
Is that a question to?
Yeah, so the developer, the owner,
The building
who
height
wants to
question,
answer,
you wanna
who wants
address
to
that?
answer it.
The question is the building height and how it impacts the view shed.
The view shed, well, I guess it depends on what you're trying to look at. If you're trying to see the mountains, we're to the north of all existing development. If you're, so, is it to the west?
To the north, everybody's looking west, right, or south, or north, but not.
The trees are taller than 40 feet.
The trees are taller than 40 feet.
The
And
design, as it was described to me, was set up so that the westward side of development would be taller, and then moving east.
No.
That's phase one and phase two, phase 1A and B.
So that's why I'm asking, what does this do with the PUD-S? And would it just be willy-nilly, 40 feet here, 40 feet there? What's the plan?
so this doesn't affect phase 1A or phase 1B at all? And the PUD zoning stays in place? It's just changing that if there are multi-unit structures, those will be developed under the R4, not the R3. So the eastern portion, east of the creek and all those trees around the creek, will remain exactly as it is. We're not touching that at all in this process.
But would our 40-foot structures be peppered throughout the area?
No.
Or would they be contiguous, or what?
They would probably be clustered.
Yeah.
Anything else, Teresa?
Yeah.
Susan, you got anything? Marie?
So I'm gonna ask the white elephant question in the room. With the cost these days of the materials and the labor and how the market currently sits, the ROI would have to be pretty high, so I can understand how you'd need a volume of apartments or living spaces. Would you, at this point in your rough plans, are you looking at selling, like as in a condo scenario, or apartments where you're renting? What are we looking at here?
At this stage, we don't know the answer to that question.
I'm uncomfortable with no plans for 87 acres. I'm really uncomfortable with that. It's like, what is the problem? That 87 acres has been there from the beginning. It was semi-platted out to satisfy the city's, water and sewer requirements per annexation agreement. So I go back to, what's the problem with the original plan? Except that things cost more now. But we have under conditional use, allowed up to 8 units per acre. And even if there's 49 acres of 8 units, and yeah, the term affordability doesn't sell me. Workforce housing doesn't sell me unless there's a deed restriction attached to it. Because of what's affordable to you or what's affordable to the gals, that's just that's just a cute little term, but we're not going for that one. I think we did that before with Alpine Basin. So I just, without a plan, I'm uncomfortable with it, with an R4 changing to R4, unless you can give me a really good reason why that, besides that buildings cost more now.
Okay. So if there were enough people in Red Lodge who could afford large lot, single family, we probably would not be changing the zoning. But again, housing is the sum of its inputs. It's labor, materials, land. So if people can't afford, a half acre or, a 3,000 square foot home, you need to be more efficient with those things and do with less. So that's how you get toward more affordable, market-created, not subsidized, but market-created affordable housing. So the issue is that land was annexed, and under that plan, it's not developing. We're not getting any housing out of it, right? Nothing is happening there. So if there were enough people in Red Lodge who could afford that kind of product, we would leave it as is, but there aren't.
If it weren't the entire tract, if it were a portion of the tract with a plan in place, that would be something for us to look at. But to do a blanket R4 on 87 acres seems to be, I don't know what the problem is.
So
I know it's not the problem.
If you're gonna address it, come up here, please.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's the only way we can get you on the,
Yeah.
get you on the.
So if, again, we were under the understanding that if we're gonna take like 15 acres over here and do high density, we had to go through this entire R4 change, our zoning change.
That makes sense. This is tract one, you would have to have it survey a portion of it, so it now has its own certificate of survey, and then a plan for that, and then we would look at that plan, and that would make more sense to me. Right now, the way this certificate of survey is remainder of tract one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that, but, if, Jeremy?
So it's a subdivision. So you can't just survey off a tract and say, we're gonna zone that R4, that's a subdivision. So they gotta go through the subdivision process. The one option, to consider is that, you're going through this, you're gonna go through the subdivision process for these larger lots. To kind of get these larger lots established, get kind of your road corridors laid out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, come back with plans for those larger lots.
Correct.
Right? One option might be to leave it R3, go through that subdivision process, and then once you have those lots created, then come back with a rezoning request for just the lots that you want to rezone.
And then we could do that.
Yes. Once the lots are created, but you could make that part of your subdivision application, that's what you want to do in the future, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess if we would have known that, we probably would have went through that process. So.
And I'm new to this thing with Red Lodge, so I know you were dealing with.
We'll take some responsibility for that, in that we're transitioned from one consulting group to another. We don't really have a staff city planner as a consultant, so maybe you got caught up in that cloud.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry for that.
So one other thing, Sandy, is that the existing proposed plat that they had, one of the problems that we have with it is that there is there's just more of the small lots. So what we wanted to do is have sections of the small lots and then have some medium-sized lots and some larger lots. So ultimately, if we end up, we've always talked about 336 sewer and water hookups. So you might have 60 of them in this complex right here, these buildings, and then the rest of them would be,
Could be larger lots.
could be larger lots. So, you know, we had no intentions of doing, you know, 1,000 sewer and water hookups, and I know that,
City might not be.
yeah, I think Brian needs to be here a few years before we could do something like
Yeah,
that,
the
so,
commitment was 400. That was
Yeah.
the commitment. I went through the annexation.
right.
And there's
Yeah.
only 90 hookups right now, right, 92?
Well, actually, there are 62 lots in phase one, plus the 4 1-acre lots.
Yeah.
So that came up in my math to 91 hookups.
91 hookups now.
So if there were 91 hookups, there's 309 left to go. And so then I was doing numbers and, and using the 49 acres as buildable land and how big each piece would be. But you could obviously, like you said, and some of them would be dedicated to more dense, you know, more, dense residential area, and others would be larger, which would give you a better chance.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Jeff?
I have, I guess, two additional questions. One is, doesn't the PUD, as it currently is written, allow for variable size lots? It seems to me that it does accomplish what you were asking for. The other has to do with the increased height restriction. That doesn't, as I read the zoning, that just doesn't apply to multifamily housing. That applies to family dwelling units as well. So that does change, to Teresa's point, that does change the whole topology of what was originally envisioned for the Spires subdivision as it was built out into the subsequent phases. So I think we need to be very careful and really understand the changes that are being requested. It isn't just increased density, which we already allow for, but
In the R3.
in R3 and under conditional use. And the other is that the height limit applies to every parcel, not just those that are designated as multifamily units. And that has, what was nice about the original development was, as Teresa pointed out, was sort of the phased and outlook and planned development in terms of how the heights of buildings would be stepped to provide, you know, the visuals and protecting the view shed. So there wouldn't be a 40-foot house in front of a 20-foot or single-story family unit that blocks the view. So I think those are, I guess, 2 points, I guess, I'd like to point out.
Okay, most of the questions I had have been asked. I struggle with the height increase, obviously. I wonder about, can you do what you want to do under the current zoning with the exception of density? You're just adding a few more. You can have a planned development there. The density issue, and I'm not an expert in construction costs anymore, and I just don't know, is more cheaper or more better? I don't know. But I struggle with the density issue. And through the comments that we heard, and obviously we heard a lot about affordable housing and so forth, and these developments like this, it's difficult really to address the affordable housing. That's why we have the urban renewal district down there, where we can do some things with government grants and other things where we can actually really build workforce affordable housing. When we ask a developer who's in a profit situation to consider affordable housing, I'm not sure that's fair, and I just don't know if that works with the current market building costs and all those kinds of things. I think the affordable housing issue is a big issue, but I just don't think it's applicable to this particular area right now. I just don't think it is. The traffic issue, understandable. I get that, and to Jeremy's point, maybe our decision tonight sets the stage a little bit, but if the developer comes back with a conditional use plan and a subdivision plan under the R3, I have a feeling that traffic issues are gonna come up again. Whether it's R3 or R4, I think the traffic issue is gonna be there. So I don't think zoning is gonna solve that problem. I think that's a problem that you're gonna have to address as we go through the additional process. I'm just looking through the notes here to make sure. So, anyway, are there any other questions from the board before I turn it back to the? No? Okay, at this point, get a rebuttal or final comment on behalf of the applicant. You heard the questions and the concerns.
Yes,
So
thank you.
now's your chance to address those.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you. I would just say, yeah, on some of those concerns, affordability. Yeah, we, at this stage in the development process, very early on, can't say if it's gonna be luxury, affordable, anything like that. I would say the way to guarantee that housing prices could continue to go up is to not zone any land for multifamily. So that's how we get down the road to Bozeman. On property values of adjacent properties, I would say that I'm not aware that any decision-making body in the state of Montana has adopted any finding of fact as to the effect on property values. Traffic, that's something that is, we've talked about the kind of fragmentation of the approval process, and that traffic is addressed in subdivision. During that process, we have traffic engineers who do an assessment of how many trips will be generated, and what streets they'll go on, and what improvements need to be made to those streets, and what those will cost, and how much the developer is responsible for. And that's part of the agreement that the city and the developer go into. So those issues are addressed during that process. In terms of, why should this zone change happen? The existing plan that is very popular was drawn up in 2007, passed in 2007. Very different time, very different economy, very different Montana, very different situation for your service workers here in the city of Red Lodge. And so all of those things have changed. And if we hope to adapt, I would say that we need to, amend our zoning maps. There was some kind of discussion about, units per acre and increasing the allowable units per acre. This is increasing the allowable units per structure, which is just a little bit different. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Jeremy, you want to close?
Yeah, I guess I don't really have much more to add. The only thing I would say is that, as we go through the subdivision process, and we start actually looking at, impacts of what they're proposing for the development itself, it's the responsibility of the city. We're kind of in a catch-22, especially with traffic. We're kind of required to provide interconnectivity between neighborhoods, right? And as part of our review process, but we also have to provide multiple egress routes as required by state law for emergency services to evacuate people if there's an emergency, that sort of thing. But I will say there is ways to mitigate that. If we provide a connection, there's ways to mitigate by, maybe that's an emergency access only. We can provide a gate that's only usable by the emergency services during evacuation, so that normal traffic cannot go in and out of there, but it would be available in an emergency services situation. But those that's jumping ahead to things, right?
Yeah.
And, that's part of the subdivision review process and impacts, and we'll evaluate all those things and come up with conditions that they're required to meet before they can plat. So, that's down the road, but I just wanted to kind of close with that.
Okay, thanks. All right, at this point, we're gonna go to board discussion here, and, we need to come up with a recommendation, decision, whatever. So, Jeff, do you have anything you wanna start?
Well, I'll just kind of repeat what I've already said. I don't see what the problem is. It's really trying to be solved here by the change from R3 to R4. R3 provides for multi-unit families. It's allowed for duplexes. It's conditionally allowed for 2 or more.
Up to 4, right?
No,
Just
greater
2.
than 4. That's what our zoning says, that under conditional use, you can evaluate and approve
I don't have the full zoning.
multi-family units greater than 4
Mr. Chair.
units. So the other aspect, I think, is that the current, as we've seen the phase 1 develop, it has provided for a range and diversity of housing types, relative to a variety of income levels. So again, I don't see, how, if we saw a plat with the proposed subdivision and what was planned for each of the parcels, that would make make a decision much more easier and have something to evaluate against. So I guess the key points here is R3 provides 2 units or more under conditional use. It provides for a mix of different housing types, which is a diversity. Provides for a diverse neighborhood in terms of workforce and use workforce and more globally, not in the terms of affordability, but just in terms of a residential neighborhood that has a mix of working families as well as retirees and those kinds of things. And then finally, R4 was not really intended for an area like this. I would like to see a proposal come forward as a subdivision review with recommended zoning changes appropriate to that. That way, we have a better sense of evaluating what the impacts are likely to be, and provides even the public in terms of a better sense of what the future of their neighborhood is going to look like. So, as it stands right now, I'm not in favor of the zone change.
Okay, thanks. Teresa, go ahead.
Okay, so, there's a comment I haven't, sorry, is there something else we're missing here?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify to what Jeff was saying. So there's a district-specific standard for R3 that says no more than 4 units. It's not in the table, but it's district-specific. So it says,
that right?
4 is the
Go
max.
up to 4. That's what I remember. And R4 takes you 4 up to X.
Yeah, 4 doesn't have a limit, it's just
And you
conditional
go up
use.
to X.
Yep.
After 5, it's whatever, so they could do 60-unit apartment complexes, just
Yeah,
the
that's what I
condition.
understood. Okay.
So didn't we approve more than 4 units previously?
No.
Yes.
It was a 4-plex and a 3-plex. They were 2 separate buildings. This would be like 7 in a single building
But
shared
on a
wall.
single parcel.
On the Nygaard, there was 8. Both of the Nygaard 1-acre parcels have 8 homes on them, standalone. I was just up there, not under one roof.
Okay.
One parcel, 8 units.
Okay. Teresa, go
All
ahead.
right, so, the opening of all this discussion was that this informs the developer about subdivisions and zoning. When the developer purchased the property, it was already informed that it was R3.
Right.
And I don't think there's a problem with R3 and the variety of housing that's allowed for on any of those lots. And so I echo what's been said, but I also want to share that, to me, this creates a discontinuous
contiguous or non-contiguous islands of R4 or more like urban density housing among R3 neighborhoods. And it's awkward, and it changes the character of the neighborhood, and it was not as intended. So I don't think that I don't see that there's any issue with R3 and the variety of housing that's allowed there. And, you know, hopefully we can move ahead with subdivisions that provide for those types of, you know, those varieties of housing. And without the density that causes impacts that we haven't even been able to discover yet. So, I think that pretty much, I think everything else has been said, and that's all I have for now.
I'm all for workforce housing. That's my main thing. I don't see this as an appropriate location for workforce housing. It's a really long walk into town. The bicycle paths, perhaps, they still are gonna be on Willow Creek Road. And I go back over and over again to what are we trying to solve? I understand that the Allens have been trying to sell it for a couple of years, and the problem is 87 acres minus the parks and the roads, it's down to 49, and they have over 300 commitment to the city for sewer and water, and that's a large amount of money. So, you know, when you go to build, and I'm sympathetic for all of that, but I am not in favor of zoning all 87 acres as R4.
Okay, thank you. Marie?
I'm gonna just talk realistically because a lot of you know me, well, not this season, I run up there a lot to the golf course and the Spires, or not this year, but anyway, and it is peaceful, and it would drastically change the whole essence and spirit of those two subdivisions. And if we can't get even a partial vision of why it needs to be R4, my vote will be no at this point.
That's pretty much where I am. I think it's possible that if there were additional information and more detail, I might go the other way, but based on what we know right now, I can't do that.
Yeah. I agree with the comments. Okay. All right, I need a motion to adopt or deny the staff report.
I move to adopt where's my wording? I move to adopt the staff report ZA 2024-20 as finding of fact.
Need a second. Second by Marie. Any discussion? You wanted to make an adjustment in the staff report?
No, I don't. I have some concerns, I guess, not concerns, but questions about the staff report, and it just basically had to do primarily with putting the cart before the horse in terms of.
Yeah, but in terms of the document, you're okay.
Relatively okay. I would have liked to see more addressed in terms of reference to the annexation agreement and some of the things outlined in that. And I guess I don't really see a lot here in terms of really addressing the question in terms of what's the problem that's trying to be solved by rezoning 87 acres. Parceling it out, or in terms of doing a combined subdivision review and zone change, that where we have more information in front of us, I think would have been much more helpful to be part of the staff.
Well, considering this is their first staff report, maybe we can have those discussions.
Well, we didn't have any of that information, we don't know what they're planning.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was nothing to include, right?
Any other comments on the staff report? Roll call, please.
Bloomer,
Yes.
DiBenedetto,
I think it's incomplete from the standpoint, no, it's incomplete from the standpoint of not having enough information.
Yes or no?
Whistler,
we're voting on the staff report, the document that was prepared by our consultant, this document.
And how it lines up. I mean, because we talked about all these other things. But here's the staff report, and see what the finding of fact is very bottom.
The staff report summarized the issue and addressed the various.
Yeah, I know it's got 24 pages.
Well, she's thinking, Sandy?
Yeah.
Sandy's a yes. Greg? Well, she's thinking. Marie?
Yes.
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 Okay. So, all yeses and one no.
No.
Two noes. Two noes, I'm sorry, two noes. So the staff report passes. Okay, I need a motion, to either recommend or not recommend approval of the amendment.
I move to deny the approval of the petition for a zoning amendment to amend ordinance 957, City of Red Lodge zoning regulations 2022, modifying the zoning of the approximately 87-acre tract located immediately east of 2918 Bainbury Avenue, legally described as the remainder of Tract 1, Certificate of Survey number 921, and future phases of the spires at Red Lodge, located in Section 15, Township 7 South, Range 20 East, PMM, Carbon County, Montana, from medium-density residential planned unit development, R3 PUDS, to high-density residential planned unit development, R4 PUDS. Because
Yeah, you need a reason why.
You need to
added.
say why.
Because there was no reason given for the request for change.
I would, if it were me, I would tie it to your zoning regulations and say, you know, the zoning regulations for R4 indicate that this is a more appropriate next to commercial industrial, and this is not. Therefore, this reasonable recommendation. That way you have something to tie it
The
to.
R4 was designated to be next door to commercial, and there is no commercial up there, it's all residential. So based on that alone, I would turn it down.
Should we itemize some of the other issues as well in this motion?
That's up to you. I mean, that's the one that ties it to something, in your regulation. I don't think you necessarily have to. I think you can just say, we don't feel this is appropriate because the zoning regulations say this is meant for a transition zone between commercial and residential, and there's no commercial in the city.
And the other comments would show up in the minute.
Correct.
Okay, Greg, did you get all that?
Sure did.
You sure? So tell me what you wrote down for the reason.
Oh, second.
R4 designated adjacent to commercial, or R4 is designated to be adjacent to commercial and industrial, and they'll feel appropriate.
Any other discussion?
Well, you seconded it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I heard you second it.
You did, I know you did.
I heard.
Did Jeff?
Jeff, any other discussion?
Like, I would probably add or amend that rationale that really it's a lack of information in terms of what the proposed impact or likely impacts would be with the proposed solution.
Do you accept that?
I would accept that as amended.
And I would add, I think if this is gonna go straight to council, I
Yeah.
think it's important that R3 provides.
Let me make sure, Greg, did you get that? Yes,
That is a
comment?
good, that is a good point, Terry.
All right, now Teresa, what's your?
R3 already provides for that variety of community housing, not saying anything about affordables, but a variety of community housing. And if this, in effect, creates an island of high density among characteristics R3 as a neighborhood. I mean, It's a mouthful, but that's largely what we've all been saying.
Greg, how did you write that down? So,
R3 already provides community housing, and this creates an island of high density.
does that work for you, Teresa? So there's three reasons for turning it down.
Yeah, and we'll rewatch it to make sure we get it
Okay.
spot on.
And I have a second to those amendments. Is your second go through?
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Bloomer,
Yes.
Di Benedetto,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Boise,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Conley,
Yeah.
Gray.
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to take a quick break before we go to the next one, or no? We'll be back at 8:45.
Boy, this place emptied out. Thank you, Brian. We're getting hot. Yeah. Keep that on, I'll talk really loud.
Are you
Jeremy,
Great West?
No, I'm with WWC Engineering. Yeah, Great West is the city engineer.
The city.
Yep.
You guys are.
And a lot of.
Just contract planner, just the land use planner, so we help with zoning. Yeah, we just help with zoning.
Are you about ready to get me out?
I'm gonna call the meeting back to order. Okay.
I just went to
The next item before the board is a public hearing conditional use permit application for the development of townhome units with 4 or 6 units per structure on lot 10 for the Thomas Early addition to the city of Red Lodge, generally located northwest of Broadway Avenue South, south of 22nd Street West, between Adams Avenue South and Grant Avenue South, in the high-density residential R4 zoning district. I want to thank Quick Properties and Andy for your patience as we went through this, and hopefully we can go through this in a timely manner. First, we'll qualify the planning board on this issue. Does any member of the planning board have any ex parte communication to disclose? No. Hearing none. Does any member feel that they should recuse themselves from participation in the hearing and decision on the matter before the board?
No.
Has the matter been properly noticed as required by the Red Lodge zoning regulations?
Yes.
Okay. Let the record indicate that the Red Lodge planning board has been called and qualified to hear the matter at hand, that the matter is quasi-judicial in nature and has been properly noticed. We'll start with a staff report on behalf of the city.
Okay, well, I mean, you got most of it right there, so. Yeah, this application is, for a conditional use permit, for 5+ units. The proposal is for 4 4-plex buildings and 2 6-plex buildings on the property. We reviewed it against all the requirements of the zoning regulations. We've added 20 conditions of approval to this. Many of these are kind of their standard conditions of approval. And again, we're new to the city of Red Lodge, so we look back at some previous staff reports and stuff like that, right, to inform us kind of like of what your standard conditions are and stuff like that. And then working through the developer, through the completeness review process, there were a few things in here that were added to, basically at their request. And some of, one of those is final stormwater plan. The application did not include a stormwater plan to review. And basically the the justification is that, you know, it costs a lot of money to put together the civil plans for a project like this. And so, the intent is to get the use approved first, and then they would provide the plans to go along with that.
That would be a conditional use, a condition that stormwater plan will be.
Yep, so we've got stormwater plan in there as condition number 9. They did provide a landscaping plan, but we did require a final landscaping plan. You know, with our final civil plans and stuff like that, that will include a final landscaping plan for review against the landscaping requirements. To comply with the water quality requirements in the zoning districts, and the site is over 1 acre, they will be required to get a stormwater pollution prevention plan from DEQ that will make sure that they keep any sediment or anything like that on their property. It doesn't go off-site. DEQ administers that, and that they'll have to provide that SWIP documentation prior to starting construction. Let's see. Just trying to pick out the specific conditions for this. A final parking plan. They did provide a parking plan with the submittal, but we just want a final one to review. And then I think the last one specifically for this is condition 18, which they have a drive-through parking lot. And R4 does not allow, prohibits drive-through parking in the R4. And so we're requiring that a fence, that a gate or something you put on that, on one of those entrances. The development to the north has that same thing. So that was a requirement on the development to the north of this. And if you look at that site, they have a gate on that access to the west, their site as well. So we would essentially be basically requiring that same thing on this, just to prevent that drive-through traffic. Other than that, it seems to meet all the requirements. We did receive one comment letter from Historic Preservation Officer Rebecca Van Horn, and I think you guys all got a copy of that, so I won't read it. And then, yeah. I think that's it, unless you have specific questions. I won't go through every.
My only comment for clarification is there's a design review as part of this staff report, so are we doing a conditional use and design review, or is that going to be a separate?
That's up to you. I mean, if you want to do design review tonight, that's fine. In Greg and I's review of the zoning regulations, we did not see that in the residential districts, that design review was required. But if you want to do that, you could just make it part of your motion in discussion tonight.
Okay.
It's just that all the stuff that was provided looked like a design review. And it seems to me that we've always done a conditional use and a design review at the same time. So that's why.
And you may have done it in the past, just as, because you've always done it. I just didn't see it in the actual regulations that it's required in the residential districts. In the commercial districts, it's required.
Oh, you're right.
So the commercial districts, you would have done it for sure, because it is required for all the commercial zoning districts. But in the residential, there's no requirement. There's no design review required in residential.
But we've been doing it.
Yeah, but, yeah, if
We
you,
have it, not for residential. Think about it, what residential districts we have. Solving commercial.
We did,
Yeah.
but design review.
That's a commercial.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I don't, like I said, I'm learning all your guys' stuff, so.
I just don't think we've ever done one in a residential home.
I agree with you. Okay. Anything else?
No, unless you have questions. I don't want to go through the whole
Well, we
thing.
deal with them, I'm sure we'll have some. Okay, report on the behalf of the applicant, Andy or whoever. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. Nice to see some new faces. I'm Andy Scatbold, 202 Hauser Avenue. I'm the managing member of Cricker Creek LLC. And that's my first correction on the note. It'd be the applicant would be Cricker Creek LLC. Thank you for letting me present tonight. pretty much on page with the staff report, have a few updates to some of the conditional uses. One would be, I have an alternative site plan to review the drive-through parking lot for review and consideration. This would be closing off the Adams Avenue entrance and just creating one entrance for our development. That would allow us to add some more landscaping buffer zone between the commercial space across the street from the residential side. We prefer having it fully through, but if that's not allowable, then we would like to add this. And I have copies for the whole commission if you guys would like them submitted tonight. The second note would be, I think there was mention of a dumpster area, and we would like to have individual garbage cans because the proposals for individual units, and we're not planning on putting in a dumpster for the whole development as a whole. Everyone has their own individual cans just because they're individual homes from that perspective. So we'd like to make that correction. And then the last thing would be, we provided more than code for parking. I know the city staff would like to have a review, but it'd be nice to have a final judgment on that number. We've overparked the development only because more parking, in our opinion, is better for something that has higher density to it, so we don't overflow onto the neighboring properties and the city streets. And so we are over the required amount, but it would be nice to have some feedback on that so we can make final designs. And other than that, we're fine with any of the recommendations and conditions.
Note those additional adjustments on here. Make notes on them so that when we come to the motion, we'll know what needed.
Greg, did you write those down? And I guess I, just to add to that too, yeah, that was one thing I should have brought up too. The board does have to make a decision on the parking as part of your motion, because there is, in that section of the zoning, it does say that if they're asking for more than, or providing more than what's required, that the board has to say that that's okay. So,
You're not about condition 8 right now, right?
yeah. Yep, but you as a board tonight also, as part of the motion, should say, yep, we're okay with, they're providing twice as many parking spaces as is required. So as part of your motion tonight, you need to make that, say that you're okay with that or you're not okay with that. Why? Does that make sense? I should have added that to my discussion, sorry.
Okay.
We're sharing.
Can we share?
Yeah,
I'll share with Al.
Okay.
I have some questions about it, but it said something about one in the parking lot being closed and the other not. What led you to believe which end was the other?
So when we reviewed that request, we looked at what each side of the development looked like, and the side on Adams is directly across the street from a busy commercial operation, and these are residential housing, so it makes sense to buffer that area as much as we can. So that would allow us to create a bunch more plantings, trees, so forth, to provide a little bit more shelter for our residents and from the commercial operation. Additionally, there's some site slope that happens on that site, and it is a little bit easier for us to do construction parking if we would close that end off and make it more level versus sloping down to the road at Adams.
Okay, but you have it coming out from Grant,
Yes.
which is right in the middle of the residential non.
Correct, and this is residential, non-commercial also. And there's, I believe there's two houses on that road.
How many people and how many parking places?
There's 28 homes on this site.
And they can have X number of residents.
We could have one in there. We don't know how many are going to be there.
And there were some comments, I think, or in maybe a word or two here or there, about ADA spaces. And I know with all the stairs, you're not going to get a lot of ADA
be on the lower level. So, am I missing where they are? on here?
They're not provided, they're not required to be provided on this type of housing.
You prefer to assume the liability is provided.
For our code review from our architect, they have reviewed the codes and they have designed this accordingly, and it does not specifically say we have to provide for separate ramps and so forth.
Okay, do you have any of the people coming in and out of the parking lot, do you have any of them going to the south once they turn onto Green?
Well, you can't, it's a dead end cul-de-sac there, so they have to go to the north.
Yeah, I'm not happy with that, because I live 2 blocks.
Sure.
You know, be upfront about it.
Sure.
And you all have just redone the entire lot, bringing in dirt that you tore down this backside. And I would grant you that regular cars going in and out of there probably going right outside my window, but it was making a lot of noise, and the road has all this dirt on it, and
Sure.
for reasons that are obvious. Do you have anything in your plan that mitigates that possibility, because you have no idea at this point what kind of cars you're going to get?
It's gonna be any residential type of development, just like your neighborhood, it'll be
My
the same
neighborhood
type.
doesn't have any parking lot of that size.
Sure.
Of course, even when the old hospital was functioning, it didn't have that many parking.
Sure. Well, it's, what I guess I'm referring to is it's gonna have the same type of vehicles that you have in your same neighborhood. We have, for the last few months, had a lot of heavy construction equipment going in and out of there, and it's been very noticeable. That's not the intent going forward. You know, it's gonna be a residential development with people living there. I don't see, where that would have construction equipment.
Not yet, not yet. I want one more thing.
Yes.
How long is your, because there could be other people from the neighborhood too. How long is your anticipated building time?
It could take anywhere between 12 and 18 months to build all of them out.
That sounds fair. Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, because you're gonna get a lot more questions from the board, but I want to hear from the public.
Absolutely.
You finished with your presentation?
I'm finished, yeah.
Okay, only gotten one written comment, is that correct?
Correct. From the,
And that's part of the record?
yep.
Okay, now we'll open it up to the public, make any comments or, have any questions on this particular project. Anybody speak to it?
Anyone left online?
Well, I'll go online after I finish it here. Name, please.
Becky Van Horn, Historical Preservation Officer for Carbon County. Thank you for the invitation, whoever made the mistake of sending that to me. Just wanted to make a couple of comments here in addition to what I've written in my letter, which you all have seen. My first concern as the Historical Preservation Officer is the CM Alive Zoo, which is just right next door. The building itself is approximately 100 years old. It began as a fur farm in 1924, so it's right there on its birthday. My issues are this: what plans are in place to protect the building and the grounds during the construction, since there's only a 6 to 10 foot easement on either side? Is the zoo also in the sites to be torn down and developed? And then what will the long-term effects be on the area if such a large housing development is put in place in this area? Another cause of concern, which we just saw earlier, is about density. There is a lot of people that just walked out of this building that probably have no idea about the density of this project. 28 units total, all 3-bedroom units, 1 private single vehicle garage with 2 parking spots outside of each of these 28 units, with a family of 4 that would total 112 people living in a lot that's barely bigger than 1 acre. So just keep that in mind as this goes forward. And none of them are small enough for people to really, unless you're a large family, afford. So if the average vehicle if the average household has 2.5 vehicles per unit, the average of the state is 5.1 per family. So that would total about 70 cars within that area if you'd go by 2.5. So that being said, there's a total of 84 parking spaces. None of them are ADA, as Sue mentioned, which seems rather exclusive to me, to people who are already living in the area next door, Mountain View Apartments. That is an area where ADA people have taken residence. It's low income. It is required for that to be low income. There is very limited street parking that should be addressed. This makes things like holidays, social gatherings, potential burdens on the local neighborhood and business. I just heard that the entryway is going to be put on Grant. I don't know if I like that any better than Highway 212, to be honest with you.
212.
Adams. Yes, it would be going on to Adams. So 212 enters onto Adams right there. Grant, private area, lots of traffic going through that area now. So I don't know if I really like either of those options, but change and progress is something I'm not the enemy of. I'm just doing my job here. Circle 17 gas station exit is right there. Could pose a potential hazard for pedestrians and motorists alike. And people that are already running those businesses already struggle with parking. Go to Sweetgrass, park on the wrong side, you'll hear about it. So, and then next to that, we're talking about the way the building blends and its lack of green space. Setbacks are only 6 to 10 feet. There's a lot of animals that have made their homes in that lot that was just bulldozed. Bears, moose, mountain lions, birds, turkeys, deer, all of them lived there for some time. Now they have no place to go. And then there's also some things that we need to mention as well about the overall design elements of the building. Doesn't really blend well with the natural environment. According to the digital renderings, there's lightly corrugated metal, unnatural wood colors, and it kind of stands out against the history of the area and the natural landscape. I mean, even if they just decided to use things that maybe blended a little bit more with the natural environment and the historical looking elements, darker wood materials, that would be nice. So that is another part that we should talk about. And then going back to affordability in housing. A brand new 3-bedroom townhome with updated appliances would virtually be impossible for many locals to afford. So as more people are forced to leave this town, people who grew up here, people who work here, they have to go out of the city. What is it? Was it 35% they said have to commute from Billings? Local businesses are going to suffer the consequences because we're still not addressing the issue of employee housing or affordable housing in this area. If we only cater to the needs of the rich, retired, and remote workers, there'll be no one left to create the experiences that this town has. And then I want to offer some positive notes to the project. I do appreciate the attempt to provide the community with additional housing that doesn't include a multi-million-dollar home. I believe that these units would be less desirable for people looking to book an Airbnb in this area, so that it could be primarily a residential. And then apart from the comments I made about the design elements, they are relatively attractive looking structures, modern with private garage spaces. And I do like the renditions, the digital renditions, depictions of having low light pollution fixtures. And I also like that the plans include trees, but it would be nice to have some biodiversity within that, stuff that maybe would be more shrubs, things that are native, not just big trees. And then thank you all for the invitation. And we've all seen some changes here in the past decade, and it's important for everyone to come forward and make public comments. And thank you again for the invitation.
Any other comments?
My relative concern would be Steve Roy. 815 Bigfoot Circle. Okay. I would be concerned, and I don't know anything about the project, I haven't seen a lot of it, but I would be concerned about anything that looks like Alpine, or the density of Alpine, again, showing up in this city. I think it does not carry the look of Red Lodge, and so I'm in agreement with the lady there, and that would be my concern. I just worry about the overall view and look, and then, again, traffic. So, okay, thanks.
Any other comments? Come on, Dave.
If there's anybody online who'd like to comment, please come off mute. I'm not seeing any, Chair.
Okay, one more pass, any more comments? Okay, the public comment on this particular issue is now closed. We'll now go to board questions of the applicant of the city. Susan, do you have anything more?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Yes, several questions. I guess first one is, what is the target market that you're designing this for?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Target market, there are 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. They're really designed for families, weekend retreats, those type of things. With that being said, these will be the lowest price new construction in town. That's where the density comes into play to start bringing pricing down, not up. But they're still, they're not affordable housing. That's not what's going on here. But they will be the lowest priced new construction in town.
I'm not concerned about affordable housing.
Correct.
I'm concerned about workforce housing. Workforce that is needed to keep this community sustainable and providing good services that people are moving to enjoy. I guess, how does this development alleviate the shortage of workforce housing and providing that range of housing that could be afforded by a teacher, could be afforded by a nurse, could be afforded by a professional or engineer or somebody that's in sort of that mid-income?
Sure. So these homes are designed to be as attractively priced as you can. With that, some of the workforce housing in a lot of resort cities, you have multiple people in one unit. That could very well happen in these cases. We have been approached by a business owner in town that was interested in our concept for his own workforce housing, but it takes a combination of things, and that could very well be what some of these units are used for. It could very well be a family that has 2, 3, 4 kids. It could very well just be one retired couple. They could be all over the place, but they're really designed to be kind of an open book for things. But by the nature of their design, by adding the density, adding the square footage, so they have multiple bedrooms, and we have parking to support those people, it can be used for workforce housing if someone would just choose to buy one and split the cost with multiple people.
So these units will be sold as individual units as opposed to
We're not planning on using these as long-term rentals. Some owners may choose to do that. We are planning this as a for-sale product. And what owners choose to do with it from there, that's up to them.
Teresa?
Yeah, I would like to add, so I went out and looked at it today, and you're providing patios on the bottom and balconies on the top, and they're all facing outward, which is great, because everything's cemented over or targeted over in the middle. People will be staring at the cars next door that row up the whole side, and that's as good as the view is, and you think that's gonna sell,
I think so.
okay? So the lot has been leveled with the fill material that's gone in there, and the boulders on the front end and back end, and the wet trees that are cited in the report are gone, everything's white. The soil report is irrelevant because it's all been infill. What's gonna happen with, you've leveled it, has that been permitted by anyone?
We're just doing site improvements, and so we've only disturbed the 1/3 of the front side of the front side has had some fill in there.
It's bouldered together.
Correct.
And I'm concerned about the water runoff, which is gonna spill over into the Frontier Apartments next door where people are parked and their little smoking area sits. And then, the runway, the driveway up on the front of Adam, I'm glad to hear you say you want to put it out the back, because right now it looks like a slough, that the water from this whole covered area, impervious to the ground, is gonna run down and cross the street into the Circle 17 area. And so if you're gonna put the drive out back, that street is not even paved.
Correct.
Who's gonna pave it?
That can be up for discussion with the city street.
Not even paved, and it's full of potholes. So, so you're gonna replant the trees, it's a minimal level, is what we've heard so far in the report.
Actually, with my revised site plan, it actually increases it over that, but there's, 60-some plantings of trees alone. Most of the trees that were disturbed were dead or dying, and so it wasn't like we were taking out a forest that was pristine.
And why do you feel you need to cram in there above and beyond what is, appropriate for that acreage?
So the whole concept of having a growth plan for the city is to promote urban infill, to promote density, especially in the urban setting, and this provides all of those things that you guys have asked for developers and landowners to try to accomplish. And by doing so, it allows us to bring down the cost of building.
Your break-even point and your cost. So, Adam, it's wonderful that you're looking at density and adding it in P3 South. That's actually where we want density as well as the north. But, it seems like it's an over-dense, proposition with the amount of units per this one little acre.
It's more than 1 acre, but
1.1 acre.
we had it originally planned for another 6 units on there, which I thought was over planned. We dialed it back to 28, and that's what we've been proposing.
28 is almost double what it's done.
That's double what the R4 is in this city. Correct, that's not necessarily in other cities too, but that's what it's here for, and that's why we presented it underneath the conditional use.
The 30 would be double your use size at 28. So it's just, I don't see how this can be attractive. It's nice that it presents an opportunity for density, but you're going to be staring at a row of cars and the back of another development, and then what's on the side? I don't know. You've got Circle 17 on one side and then trees on the other, which have been maintained so far.
Sure.
On the south.
Well, one comment to look at is the typical home that is in the same price point as these in Red Lodge will be a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom home that's, 80 years old, that's maybe 800 square feet with no garage. These are double that with a garage, and they're all brand new. I mean, there's a lot of advantages by having new construction at that same price point. And this is one of those things that you have to weigh in order to get that price point down, is density has to be part of that equation in order to get that.
the only way, to improve that is to lengthen the quality of the building materials and the design.
You could do that also, and that's not something that we're proposing.
Andy?
I was disappointed that they're not gonna be rentals. I really was. I was hoping this would be workforce housing, because that's what we're desperately in need of. When you say they're gonna be the lowest priced new homes, the lowest priced new homes are $569,000. So these are gonna be $500,000,
Our entry price is $450,000.
but I think that you said the same thing with Alpine Basin, and it was, so.
True, they've grown in price since
Yeah,
then,
as
but
prices go up, you can't really guarantee that. So, I mean, in town, you're right, for $400,000, you get a 2 or 3 bedroom, 1 bath, 100-year-old house. And that's true, with probably no garage. And I was kind of thrown back with the drive-through, because to me, this would make more sense to drive through. If all the trash cans are gonna be not screened, because they're going to be, maybe they'll be in their garages. So you're talking about them just having weight haulers individually?
they're individual homes, and so the garbage cans will be required to be inside of
So the trash
their
truck
garage.
is gonna go in, collect all those, and then have to back out?
Perhaps, that's not how we originally presented it, but, working with, some of the city staff requirements, we gave an alternative. You can consider both from our point of view.
So that, you know, if the median income for Red Lodge for a household is $39,472, they're not gonna be affordable to Red Lodge residents. And like I said, I was disappointed.
I'm not saying this product is affordable. That's not what I'm saying here.
No, I know.
I didn't never have done that. I want to make sure I'm crystal clear, right?
That's where my disappointment, like I said,
Yeah.
that's where my disappointment was when I saw this. I thought, oh, great, we're gonna have rentals, we'll have a place for our people to live. And now I find out that they're for sale as opposed to putting a dent in our workforce housing issue.
In my opinion, as a developer, the workforce housing situation is a really difficult situation, especially from a private standpoint. If it's a private-public partnership, it has a lot better chance of having anything to go forward, but they just don't work. You can't build them and make money.
Did you also talk to Tom Fisher? Because I know that, of course, he likes to deal with a bigger piece of land. This is only 1 acre.
No, I don't know who that
Is it
is.
only, there can only 5 acres? Yeah, 5 acres. I think he said he could squeeze something in a 3-acre parcel, so I just, anyway, I was disappointed. That was me, Val.
Great.
Well, I'm a firm believer in the free market. The market always corrects itself. And since I think I've lived here now 27, 28 years, we've always had a workforce housing issue here, and no one resolved it to this point. And in my opinion, that's not your problem. So if you build these properties, the reason why you have to build these properties, I get it, it's dense-wise, is because the return on investment would not be there otherwise. So, there are some issues, I think, with this, but when it comes to it being on private contractors' shoulders for us to come up with ideas for workforce development, that's just not your department. That's my
Very clear. I think it's not a developer's issue that we don't have workforce housing. It's, a multitude of issues, that a city and a private partnership, public partnership is the only way to address it. And that's not for today. So.
What point in the process will you, find out more about floodplain and stormwater?
Well, not in the floodplain.
I know you're
Yeah.
not in the floodplain, but there's some things that I don't think have been renounced. The flooding that we had, and I wondered if there had been any inquiries in that, and if not, at what point you felt like that.
So our civil engineers have been working on plans, but they haven't finalized things. depending on the outcome of the conditional use permit, that's part of our, building permit application, so all of those would be resolved prior to that, and we'd also get the, SWIP permit from the state. You can't, file in one of those permits until you know what you're actually gonna build, and I don't know if I can build this yet or not until the conditional use permit is ready to go. So all of those, we have no problems having, being, a conditional use, as part of, the approval.
Okay, and at what point will you be taking the city about,
So we've already spoken to Public Works a number of times, and our engineers have been working with them on hookups, and where to hook things up and the capacities that are there and services. So that conversation's been happening for months and months.
yeah, but do you know about where these things are going to be?
I know exactly where they are. I know exactly where they're gonna be. In fact, if you look on, what we filed, we had a preliminary, civil that had all the hookups on for where we're gonna hook up at the city level, and then where we're gonna run the utilities, down the middle of our drive and then into each individual unit. So that was already provided.
Okay.
What's that?
That's it.
Okay, okay.
Jeff?
Yeah, I guess question is either for you or for staff. Might have missed it, but has there been any traffic impacts in terms of increased volume exiting Orchard Trail?
So the zoning regulations don't require a traffic impact study, so that was not a requirement for the developer to prepare a traffic impact study. I mean, I can run a quick calculation for you if you want. How many units is on there again?
28.
So 28 units, international traffic engineers are like 7.5 trips per day for apartment type uses. So if we said times 7.5, you're looking at 210 trips per day. I mean, I don't know what I have no background on what the existing traffic levels are. Obviously, so I don't know if this is the place to say this or not. I don't necessarily support changing the access point from Adams to Grant. I think that's a mistake. Obviously, that's a dead-end street. It's low traffic volume, neighborhood traffic, versus the other side is more of a minor collector road that runs directly to an arterial road. I think it would be a mistake to put all of that traffic from this 210 trips per day onto Grant and make them drive around to access where they're gonna go anyways. So as your planner, I would not support that change to that condition. I think there's also some emergency services issues there with I think the drive-through is good to have for emergency services purposes, and putting a gate there allows for emergency access. It's just your zoning regulations prohibit drive-through traffic. So we're bound by what's in your zoning regulations, right? So, you as a board can't unilaterally say, no, we're gonna throw that out, you can do it without putting fence in. Your zoning regulations say you cannot do it. So unless you change the zoning, right, then that's a prohibition. So, that answers your question.
So we can make it.
Probably more.
We can make it a condition that he has to go ahead.
That condition's already written that way, right? It basically says that the
What
drive-through,
number is that?
it'd be, I think it's condition 18. It says parking lot shall be
Yeah,
fenced
right.
on one side.
That's the drive.
Well, I guess we
It
said
doesn't
one
say what
side.
side, though.
I guess
I gave her proposal.
Yep,
So that would be like 21.
No, so it's 18.
We'll modify 18.
So you'd modify 18 to say, fence off Granite side, and the access should be on Adams.
still have the issue of the trash trying to back up.
I don't disagree with you, but your regulations say you can't do drive-through, so.
Yeah, it says on facilities, do you consider this facility?
Well, it says drive-through facilities are
It
prohibited.
says drive-through prohibited, drive-through facilities are prohibited in residential zoning districts.
So I mean, drive-through parking lot would be, I would consider that a drive-through facility. I mean, I guess you could juggle definitions and semantics, but I would suspect the one to the north went through the same thing. That's why they have it gated on that grant site too.
They put housing there.
What's that?
They put housing on the back end. They add more density to the lot instead of going straight through. Could we call it an alleyway?
Okay, and then, so I can kind of keep this going here, so how does the board feel about, we don't want the exit to be changed from Adams to Grant, are we in agreement for that?
I would like to see it come out.
I'm sorry?
I would like the exit to be on Adams, not Grant.
Yes. Are we agreeing on that?
Yes.
Are we agreeing? Okay, so, that's already,
But that would be, there would be a fence on the grant side
For emergency.
for emergency.
so that could be a condition.
You want to have a fence there versus a landscaping buffer?
I think the multiple accesses is important for emergency.
Sorry?
I think having multiple access points for emergency services, especially as dense as this is, that way a fire truck can pull straight
Tom
through.
Jones is gonna want that.
Yeah, any fire chief I've ever worked with wants that. They don't wanna have to pull in and then have to back all the way out to Adams. They wanna be able to drive
So
through.
that,
And if there's something on Adams, you need to be able to get people out of there.
just to be clear then, so we want to exit on Adams, and so what's the secondary exit?
So the secondary exit would stay on Grant, but it would be fenced. It would be, or gated,
So the emergency exit only?
emergency exit.
Sounds like a zoning amendment to me. If one half of the city wants it and the other half doesn't. I'm just pointing it out.
Well,
I'm acceptable to that.
all
I'm
I'm
just
saying
saying,
is, whether it was a zoning issue or not, that's what we did at the Island Rock Creek. We had a secondary emergency exit.
correct.
Yeah, and I don't know why, I mean, obviously I wasn't around when the zoning was put in, so I don't know why that drive-through facility was put in the
We'll ask
R4,
for
but
forgiveness later.
I suspect it's so traffic doesn't cut through a private parking lot to get from one
You
street
need
to the other.
secondary access.
You need secondary access, so I
Where is
think that's good, so it's on Grant, but we'd have to put a fence, we'd have to gate it,
Why?
so to prevent drive-through traffic. You can't, because
What's a facility?
per the regulations, you can't have a drive-through.
Go back to
Well, what,
that.
I guess I'm getting off topic here, but a little bit. My definition of facility is like a drive-through restaurant, a drive-through bank. I didn't consider a parking issue a drive-through facility, that's me.
I didn't think either.
But you specifically read it as private residence shall not be. And what I'm hearing.
Sounds like a zoning, it sounds like zoning.
It sounds to me like there's probably something that you want to make a note of and modify the recommendation, that what we're going to do is that parking will have multiple accesses, but one end will be gated. If that's what the intention is, that's what you're gonna say. But right now, what you say is, it shall not be drive-through. And that's what you have to go by. I agree with staff's recommendation of, thou shalt not break the rules you wrote.
If I remember right, years ago, like, say the Red Lobster going in, when that rule was made, the intent was for the banks and the McDonald's and all of that. So I don't think that was the.
I remember having that on commercial from my time on planning board, but if I understood, you were reading,
It
you
says
said
in
private.
the residential zoning district. We obviously need to look at this, but this is what it says right
Is it
now.
because they didn't want the drive-through maybe going from McDonald's going into the residential?
Can be gated and not locked, that's what we do.
Sure.
And I suspect the development to the north, just the property just to the north of this, well, at least the pictures I saw have a gate. So it can't drive, you can't drive through
And they follow that same rule.
It's a secondary exit.
it. The exit's there, but it's gated.
Go ahead, Dave.
Mr. Chair, if I may have one suggestion, and I defer to staff to correct me if I'm mistaken, but one of the things, in my understanding is, the reason this is a conditional review is that some of the units are not fourplexes. There's a couple of them that are 6 and others than 4, and if there's a very small change in that, then that doesn't come before this board at all. And so I guess my input or thought process, where I'm sitting on that side of the dais, is we have some ability to negotiate conditional uses based on this. If you want to retain that control, don't kill the ability that gives you that control. I think you guys have a decision to evaluate. We want to retain our ability to issue conditional uses, or do we limit size and therefore we eliminate our ability to have input anymore?
I get that. I think we did. I've got a couple of things I want to address.
Yes.
The issue came up of the zoo in the old building there.
Correct.
What are you doing to protect that?
So we'll apply the SWIP solutions that we have to file with the state, so runoff doesn't go off. We do not own that. We have never talked to that owner about purchasing that. We have no desire to do anything with that lot. It's a private lot. It's a private building on someone else's land. I can only control what I do on our site. Part of that is going to be runoff. Part of it is going to be our construction. And in that corner right next to that is the smallest of our buildings, which is the fourplex. One of the reasons we leveled things off and created a barrier along with new trees is to provide as best aesthetic as possible from that perspective, from that lot over towards ours.
Address runoff. So
We have to as part of our SWIP program.
And you're gonna protect it by some kind of a barrier, a site barrier or something?
So we'll have to run a kind of a silt fence around that area so they don't get runoff and our soil goes onto their site.
Is that in the conditional use?
Yes, the SWIP is their condition.
And the other question is, I think it was conditional use number 8. You've got 84 parking stations.
Correct.
Right there. And you said you needed approval from this board for that number of parking stations.
Your zoning requires 1 parking space per unit. So, or no, 2. So 2 parking spaces per unit. They're providing double that. In your regulations, it says that they need to provide justification for the additional parking to the board, and the board has to decide whether or not you accept the additional parking.
And the reason for the additional parking is?
They're 3-bedroom units and there could be more than 2 occupants there with vehicles. There could be families that have teenagers with cars. They could be 3 workers that live there together and they all work downtown and they have 3 cars. The whole idea of having more parking than not having parking is if we don't provide enough real parking, not just to meet the code, but actual real parking to make sure everyone has a space, is they just overflow onto the city streets. And we're trying to be good neighbors. We don't want to see cars up and down all the streets out there with overflow.
What do you think about 84 spots?
Seems excessive to me, and I need to hear more justification, I guess, in terms of, I understand, 3-bedroom unit, 2 cars, but the idea that you're gonna have 3 or 4 workers in a building. I think we should look at something less than what's being proposed, and maybe if there's sufficient justification provided by the proponent, rate to.
So what's your number?
I don't know, to the proponent.
I would, 2 comments. three actually. One is one space per unit, so 28 is housed inside of a garage space, so it's out of public view and so forth. In front of each garage is 2 spaces. So in order just to drive into the garage, I have to put concrete there anyways. It's just if I'm gonna park a car there or not. If I don't provide 100% of that space as concrete, people are just gonna drive over whatever we have and park there anyways, regardless of the numbers that we decide here tonight. Second, cars will overflow onto the city streets. That's just exactly what happens. Third would be, I've never been in a community ever, not one time in 25 years of doing development work, has a city said you have too many spaces. It's always you don't have enough spaces. And so my question to you guys is, why? Why limit the amount of spaces? What does it do?
Not that this really pertains to you, I don't know, but like, let's say there's a birthday party going on in the Wild. Are those 2 spaces dedicated to that unit? Is that how you're?
Correct.
So basically, that's 3 spaces per unit.
Because I would want.
It's 3 spaces per unit, and that's why we came up with that number.
But there could be guests, you know, a unit could have a guest, who, you know, come for dinner. There's so many reasons. I don't have a problem.
Okay, so you're okay with 84?
Absolutely.
You need more
I
parking.
don't want them on the street.
I think it's a great way to reduce the imperviousness of this plant,
But how are you,
provide some.
I'm just trying to go on
No,
84 spaces.
the whole thing would be paved, front to back, every square inch paved.
We're doing that
Concrete
permeability,
is wherever.
you're using that permeability, does that permeable,
So
Concrete, no, it's not the proposal.
we haven't seen a civil plan yet that addresses stormwater management. That's a condition of approval.
Yep.
They'll have to submit that, and we'll work with Public Works and the city engineer to review that, to make sure it meets all the requirements, and before they
You're
can move
no
forward.
on 84? You've got grass in between the buildings.
We have grass between the buildings, we have landscaping buffers, we have storm basins that will catch all of that as part of our civil plan.
84? 84 parking, what?
It might mean something to you and might not, how we originally came up with reducing parking places. And part of it is because Red Lodge is a very walkable community. And we don't have, room on Broadway, for example, for the number of people who want to park there, that are coming in from out of town. But people who aren't coming in from out of town walk to get
Sure.
there. So that was a consideration when we decided not to require as many, and also because it would cut down the cost of building a place. Then in addition to that, having had a history of some flooding in the area, the permeability of the surface makes a difference.
Sure.
So it's something that people aren't, and a concept a lot of people aren't used to. And it's a concept that may not always be ideal. However, it's a concept that's generally worthy of consideration and research.
84, yes or no?
That's not 84.
84?
No.
No, you're a no?
No.
Yes.
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 I don't want them down the street.
So 4-3 on 84. Okay,
Note
do I
that.
need a, yeah, do I need a motion?
Yeah, I would probably make a motion, I think, and get it, just to get it on the record.
Need a motion? Can't we just do it at number 8?
I would just make a separate motion that says, you know, we accept the number of parking spaces proposed by the developer.
The thing about it is my caveat is that when the stormwater plan comes out, it was drained, placed appropriately. If you're not gonna have the permeable, then you want to drain, place it appropriately.
Yeah, all that'll be reviewed in accordance with what's required in the
I'm
zoning.
just trying to
so-
get through.
Yep.
this. So right on now, I've got a 4-3 for 84. Okay, parking space. Long-term effects, 28. Are you really locked into 28 units? I mean, if 26, 24, 22,
It's a matter of making the project work or not.
so it's gotta be 28 or.
28, or we'll probably have to go to the drawing board
28
again.
or no?
Yeah.
Well, I think, to Dave's point too, you know, if he reduces the number of units down, and he makes them all fourplexes,
Yeah.
then this board has no say in any of what he does anyway.
That's why I asked the question.
Yep, then it's just a pure zoning review
Yeah, that's what I
at that point, so.
The question on green space, I've looked at your maps, or your plats. Teresa's point, you don't want concrete city, so how are we gonna address that?
So that's part of the landscape plan, is to create, some of those islands that go out into the parking in between the units. There's grass in between the units. There's grass behind every unit on each side. There's landscaping buffers on both city streets. And other than that, if you have to start getting rid of density in order to put more grass in. I think we addressed it where we're gonna have more than code in there. It's a lot of trees in a small area. And what was there was pretty much dead and dying anyways, but this will be brand new landscaping and trees, and there'll be shrubs out in those islands and so forth, and grass in between. So I think we've done a fairly good job of addressing it with getting the density, to that same point.
Who's taking care of those community grass strips and the shrubs and all that stuff?
It'll have an HOA that will maintain the whole site, correct?
So if he gets, for the sake of argument,
Yep.
if you got rid of 4 units, then you would have to bring it in front of the.
Correct.
Yeah, those 6 units in the middle,
If you got the 2,
and those were 4.
and you upped the other units a percentage, so,
Yeah.
He did all 4 units.
anyway,
Did this property flood in 2022?
Did not.
It does.
It didn't make it that far?
No.
Even though the map kind of shows that it's 0.2%, which I think.
It absolutely did not.
It didn't.
No, I was there, the deterioration in my shop was on the other side, and it did not.
Nothing made it down Adams.
Went down Circle 17, but it didn't make down Adams.
Okay, any more questions of the applicant? Okay, go ahead.
I guess, findings there from policy number 7, Adams Avenue southwest of the property is identified in active transportation for sidewalk.
Are you already planning sidewalks?
My proposal was that we would put them in, if we could connect them to anything. We're willing to do our part, absolutely, 100%. If they're not gonna connect anything and never will, what's the point? I'd rather do more shrubs and trees and stuff, right?
I think my recollection is that's what our zoning said, something like that. My recollection is when we changed it, we talked about sidewalk islands in zoning, so.
We do have it as a condition under 16. So,
Yeah.
I do have a question. If you go ahead and gate the exit on Grant, can you put in walkways around that gate?
I don't have any problems with that. It would make sense.
At least on one side, even though, Grant doesn't have pavement or curb and gutter.
Yeah, just another way out of the development.
Basic things.
Yes.
And I saw that you could go ahead and put in sidewalks on Adams, which makes it more sense, if that would be your interest.
And we're willing to put them in. I just would like to see that they connect to something, and we're not just doing it for,
No,
you
we're
know,
not in the
no reason,
sidewalk.
right?
So that would be number 16,
Okay.
sidewalks on Adams and Grant.
So I think to answer your question,
Great.
the planning board could add a finding that the proposed site plan includes a sidewalk on Adams adjacent to the property.
And that's condition 16.
It's already on it.
The sidewalk shall.
Yeah, but he's talking about the actual finding.
Oh.
In the conclusions, we didn't state that the applicant proposed it on their site plan. So, we probably just need to add that to conclusions, that it was actually proposed by. So it ties to the condition.
Okay, Jeff, anything else?
I guess it has to go with the floodplain evaluation and designation. Since this is going, the whole floodplain issue is under review. As this is proposed or is reviewed by the floodplain administrator, what's the likelihood of this falling within floodplain, requiring floodplain insurance?
So the only place that's required is the 100-year floodplain. The current map shows that this is out of the 100-year floodplain, but because it's right adjacent to the 100-year floodplain, we always add that condition in just because at other places where we do floodplain administration, we always make the recommendation, even though it's not required that you get a floodplain permit, that we make the recommendation that you at least do an evaluation on whether or not the property will flood. And so that's kind of where that condition came from, is to work with the floodplain administrator, and their engineers, you know, to make sure that we're not building something that's gonna flood, even though it's not in the 100-year floodplain. So we can't require a floodplain permit because it's not in the 100-year floodplain, but we can ask them to at least.
I'm looking in the conditions, what number is
Got
it.
Number 17, yep.
Yeah, I was going to.
I mean, the problem is, I mean, we can't, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of teeth we have to require them to do something. It's more of a, you know, work with the floodplain administrator, you know, kind of a thing, and just make sure you're not causing a problem. If it was in a 100-year floodplain, it'd be a completely different story, right?
Yes, my question is, we know that the floodplain is being remapped. We have no clear idea of what that's going to be. What happens if this gets mapped?
Then they would have to get flood insurance. Because that'd be an after-the-fact thing, you know, they would build, they put.
Just like the other dozens of properties in town
They put fill on
too.
the property and stuff like that, so, I mean, and if it didn't flood in the last flood, it's probably okay. But it's just, yeah, I mean, if it ends up that way, then that's on the homeowners association or the homeowners to deal with flood insurance at that time, I mean, it's.
Well, I'm just thinking of the last flood.
Yeah.
It was fortunate that flood didn't go down Adams, because it breached upstream onto Highway 212. So this floodplain management thing is, you know, it's a little fresh in our minds right now.
Well, it's a valid concern, I'm not saying it's not a valid concern. Unfortunately, we just don't have any.
The issue being that if they end up in the new floodplain, that's gonna fall on the HOA and the homeowner.
Right, I mean, that's.
Well, and that's what all of us, the chance all of us.
I mean, that, yeah.
Like down by the shop.
That's everybody.
Cooper, if it wasn't for that house that took the hit, we would have been riverfront property too, but, I mean, that's just the.
Yeah, I mean, any remapping situation is gonna result in the same thing for existing properties.
Well, I guess that goes back to my question in terms of 17, it says the applicant should verify with the floodplain administrator, and I was going to suggest the applicant will verify with the floodplain administrator. You're saying can't put that, we can't be that specific in the condition.
Yeah, because you can't require a floodplain permit. If it's not in the 100-year floodplain, you cannot require a floodplain permit. And the floodplain administrator would be like, no, I can't require a floodplain permit too. You know, that, we just can't do that. All we can do is suggest that they, you know, and have them at least look at it, but we can't require. We can't require that they model the creek and determine whether or not they're, you know, unless they're in the 100 floodplain, so that's just above and beyond.
Our engineers have already done it, so I'm comfortable with that, so I'm fine.
Okay, so,
We can, we've already looked into it, and we're not in the floodplain, and we're comfortable with that fact.
Stated that, right?
yeah, so,
We went through the exercise.
Anything else, Jim?
I think it's pretty well.
Just a logistics type question while we're on floodplain administrator. We don't have a floodplain administrator unless, I have seen contracts with WWC. Are you also our floodplain administrator?
we are, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's not him as an individual, it is them as a company.
Got it.
Yeah, my boss in Helena is a certified floodplain manager, and he kind of leads that up, and Greg's helping him too, so.
Andy?
Yeah. What's the question?
Do you have any more issues?
No, I have no issue.
John? No. Susan? Jeff? Jake?
I was trying to be short to the point.
Do you want to make a final comment?
I think we'd beat this to death for now, so unless you have more questions for me, I don't think I have anything more to add.
I just want to make sure that we've noticed the conditional, amendments. We made an amendment to number 8.
Yeah.
This was set to 84. It wasn't a unanimous vote, it was a 14.
He didn't have a formal motion, I don't think.
Do I need one
I think that was the recommendation from staff.
on the motion?
Or you can include it in the motion when you do the whole thing. I don't know that you necessarily need a separate motion, I think, well,
We'll do the conditions of approval as a.
since it's a split vote though, maybe it would be better to do a separate motion. That way you're not muddying the approval motion.
I need a motion.
Andy, we need more.
Oh, I moved to stop the staff report CU
No,
2024.
I
He
need
said,
condition number 8.
oh,
To
I
to
move
accept the 84 parking
to-
spaces.
Accept the amended condition.
the way I wrote it was, 8, a final parking plan as proposed by the applicant exceeds parking requirements of section blah, 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 and is approved by the planning board.
Mention the number,
I got all that other stuff here. Yeah, no, this is number 8.
right?
A final parking plan as proposed by the applicant exceeds parking requirements of section 4.5.40 hyphen parking loading standards, and approval prior to construction. I just said exceed,
I would say,
but as proposed.
I would like the 84 in there.
and you could just add, the planning board accepts the 84 parking spaces or something to the end of that. As proposed by the applicant. Just that.
We're just talking about condition 8.
I know. So, a final parking plan as proposed by the applicant exceeds parking requirements of section blah, 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 blah. The planning board approves 84 parking spaces.
Sounds good to me.
I need a second.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Bloomer,
Yes.
Di Benedetto,
No.
Whistler, Boise,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Conley,
Yes.
Gray.
Yes. Okay.
And then I've got a change on 18, the drive-through facility.
Yeah.
I added at the bottom that, the exit on, the parking lot exits on Adams and a secondary gated exit for emergencies on Grant.
Typically, we don't.
I know.
Typically, we just write it in, and then they approve it, and then
I would make a motion.
okay, fair motion.
Since you're formally changing the recommended conditions,
my motion is on 18 to, add that the parking lot exit on Adams, secondary gate, gated exit for emergency on Grant.
With the walkway.
With the walkway.
Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I guess, alluding to what Sandy mentioned about garbage, you know, if you're talking about emergency services,
So if it's not a locked gate, the garbage truck could use it, they could go through it.
They're gonna have to keep.
And using our example, it's a gate, but it's not locked.
Right.
I feel like
Does
this
that just need to be clarified?
and the trash was,
Secondary access.
Right, secondary access for emergency vehicles.
No.
Services.
Emergency vehicles and services. You get that, Greg? No?
Thanks, Jeremy.
No,
I'm gonna reread it, Sandy. I know it's getting late, we're gonna get this done.
You can put a timestamp on that at 9 o'clock if you want to go back and review the minutes.
We're gonna get it done.
okay, parking lot exit on Adams, secondary gated exit for emergencies and services on Grant with a walkway.
Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Wilmer,
Yes.
Benedetto,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Boise,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Conley,
Yeah.
Gray.
Yes.
Okay, then the other one I had is on 16, we're gonna agree to do sidewalks on Adams and Grant.
Why would we do Grant? It doesn't have, it'd be a floating sidewalk.
That's what I heard,
So Adams would be a floating sidewalk as well.
but not necessarily Grant.
Neither one of them have sidewalks.
Sorry?
Neither Adams nor Grant at that end of town have a sidewalk.
They do not have
Do
sidewalks.
not, at presently.
You were gonna, and that was gonna be, sidewalks could be constructed along the adjacent property, along Adams Avenue South, and you were gonna add and Grant, is that correct?
No, I don't think we were gonna add Grant. I think it was just a statement that because the growth policy says that there needs to be sidewalks on Adams, that we added that as a condition that they do it.
Why did I write down Grant, somebody
I
said.
don't know.
All right.
Maybe it was maybe it was the walkway to Grant.
The problem with Grant is that there isn't curb gutter or pavement.
Okay, I'm.
No curb and gutter on Adams as well.
But that lot is only one lot off of the highway. So you can imagine that there would be some foot traffic.
One day, I'm sure there might be something.
Okay, so 16 is okay.
16
I like
16 is fine.
the way it's written.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we have floating sidewalks down by the shop that are down by, on Cooper and Seventh, and I don't,
They're walking.
All right, anything, sorry.
It's just that if you're gonna put that many people and units in here, yes, there's gonna be foot traffic and sidewalks would be great.
but just in front of.
Until you
their
get to the
property.
edge of our property, and then there's nothing to then connect
Well,
to.
maybe in the future, somebody else will add them when the stormwater projects are done.
They're gonna be walking across to the Circle 7 for a photo.
Hey, we did our floating sidewalks 20 years ago, and someday,
Never if you're
All
gonna
right,
put that many
all right.
people there.
The other one I had was on
I
street.
think one issue that relative to this discussion, a lot of traffic that comes in and out, 17 going on and actually on Highway 212. So what you're likely to say if we don't require sidewalk on Adams, you're putting pedestrians in the middle of the street on a very busy intersection.
No, I get that, it's my misunderstanding. Adams is, you said number 3?
Number 3, I read trash containers shall be stored in the parking south, unless it's screened from view. How are you gonna do that?
No.
That was my request is to remove that, because we're gonna have individual garbage cans.
This is just says to be stored in the parking zone. So are we gonna remove number 3 because they're gonna have individual trash cans? Or are they require them to keep them in the garage? Is there room in the garage for a car and a trash can?
Wouldn't that be an HOA?
The HOA will restrict all of the garbage cans of being out. They have to be stored inside of the garage itself. But my request was to remove the garbage, container from the whole site. We have no plans of ever offering that.
Do I need a motion to remove 3?
Motion to remove number 3.
Need a second?
I would second that.
Any discussion?
All the numbers.
Roll call, please. And typically the chair votes last, but that's okay. I'm the tiebreaker, but go ahead.
Do it out of time.
I'm trying to have a little fun on it.
Gray, Conley,
Yeah.
Olson,
Yes.
Boise,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Di Benedetto,
Yes.
Bloomer,
Yes. Greg, you can do it however you want. All right, any other amendments or adjustments to the conditions, additions? Hearing none. Now, we've had rebuttal from the city, and so now it's up to us to discussion. Any additional discussion or comments on this proposal from the planning board? Yes, Teresa.
I'd still like to see the number of the reduced.
Want to reduce the,
Ideas about how you make it.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. I didn't hear the question.
she's,
She's using her
she
indoor
wants the
voice.
number of units reduced from 28.
Oh, I'm not agreeable to that at all.
Yeah, I just think so. It exceeds the encouraged amount, 16 dwelling units per 1 acre, which is double.
Understand?
Okay. I don't think it's a good idea.
I need a motion to
I move to adopt the staff report, CU 2024-20, findings of fact.
Second.
Wait.
Any discussion on the staff report, Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
I know that we go to the historical preservation officer, but I think that on that letterhead, it should only discuss how that land is effective to the historical preservation. There should be a second letter with the opinion about the project. I was not happy that was included in this, since we really just needed the information on the historical preservation. So, and I don't know how one can sort that out. Probably not at this point, but.
Well, the historian's position and then personal.
Yep.
Should be separate. Yeah.
Probably just a private conversation with that person.
Or
Future-
two
I'm
letters.
only advisory anyway.
Future
so-
development.
Or two letters.
We like your advisory, I just wanted it to be separate.
There's two, you wear two different hats.
I always wear 2 different hats. I'm a Gemini.
You would like to keep it professional, we talk about the.
Oh, yeah.
Side of it,
Sure.
versus your personal.
Yes.
It was on the same letterhead, and that was where I was calling.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the staff report? Need a motion?
I moved.
I second it.
It's getting late.
And discussion? And I'm not hearing any, I need a roll call.
Gray,
Yes.
Conley,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Boise,
Yes.
Whistler, Di Benedetto,
Yes.
Bloomer,
Yes. I need a motion,
I move to approve the conditional use permit CU 2024-28 for a multifamily development to include 2 sixplexes and 4 fourplexes located on Lot 10 of the Thomas Early addition to the City of Red Lodge section 34, Township 7 South, Range 20 East, TMM, subject to the following 19 conditions. As amended.
Second.
Any other comments or discussions on the motion? Comments or discussions on the motion? Roll call, please.
Gray? Conley?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Boise?
Yes.
Whistler?
No.
Di Benedetto?
Yes.
Yes.
Bloomer?
Okay, thank you all so very much.
Thank you for your patience.
It was a very
Wasn't this
long-
fun?
This was great.
Everyone fun?
Hold it, we're not done yet.
Oh.
You can go.
Yeah, you can.
You're done there. Thank you guys very much.
Ryan, I really appreciate your tolerance for this. I'm glad you were here.
Brian can't go.
Are you done with me?
I
It's a
can-
long drive.
I'll get back to Al. I'll finish it out with everybody else.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It was
Thanks,
time for me to come say hi anyway, so.
Art, can you stay for 10 minutes and be ready to get going?
He's got to drive.
I got a long drive.
Call him on the phone.
Can you drive safely and talk on the phone?
I have hands-free, so I guess.
Okay, if you're, yeah, okay.
Okay, staff.
Or we can chat tomorrow, or whatever you want.
Staff-
I can stay if you want. I'll stay. I'll just stay.
Time out.
He needs to talk to someone.
Time out. Staff communication.
So we've got the hospital CUP scheduled for July 24th. We've got a sign permit, it's gonna go through design review.
I did bring my calendar. Our next meeting is
July 24th.
July 24th. And so that'll be Beartooth.
Beartooth Hospital
And-
CUP.
We'll do some growth policy as well.
Yep, yeah, the sign permit still needs to go through public.
I'm sorry?
There's gonna be a sign permit, a neon internally.
Oh, okay, so we have a sign permit.
But that'll be in August, so.
I'm talking about the 24th.
Yep, growth policy.
Will be growth policy and Beartooth. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think you can do that one virtually. Unless you're in the area.
I probably won't be.
No, seriously,
Yeah.
7:30.
We need you, but we need.
Yeah, I'll be on Zoom. I'll be on Zoom.
Okay.
Got it on the calendar.
Anything else, Greg?
No.
Petitions from the public and audience, anything online?
Dave Westwood, Cane Circle Red Lodge. I just want to thank you guys. This is amazing, and for you to stay focused and for the high wage you get paid, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really do appreciate it.
I'm the only one that gets paid.
Yeah, well, we had to finish it. Any comments from the virtual?
There was a hand raised earlier. Brent, did you want to follow up with the conversation, or was that? And I also see Angela Castro with the raised hand.
No, I've never raised my hand. I'm just listening and riding a bike.
Good, thank you,
Oh,
Brent.
okay, thank you.
Have a good
It may have
night.
been Angela that had a raised hand earlier.
Nope, wasn't me either.
All right.
Thank you.
Appears to be no comments online.
Adjourned.
Oh, God.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Good to meet you.
I may take up direct, no, I wanted, it was staff that I wanted to talk to for 5 minutes when we're done. Everybody else get out of here. This is past.
I think that-
You want to get in and drive off?
I think that probably should have gone back with Sanders and Stewart.
Okay, can you get it back to them?
Yeah, I'll get it.
Yeah, I have mine.
Glad you're aboard.
I keep that.
When did you go along?
We can go in the other room, you guys are on the road.
We have that.
I was on the board.
I know, but we, and Teresa and I
My
were
dog.
on the board, we were.